Blood, badge, and the boss who claimed her. She saved the wrong man. Now the most dangerous criminal in the city won't let her walk away. Maya Carter had $12 in her checking account, a 6-year-old daughter asleep in the back of her Civic, and a parking garage full of dead men staring at her through the windshield. One of them was still breathing. The tall one in the black coat, the one with eyes like a loaded gun, was watching her decide whether to run or help. She helped. That was the mistake that rewrote her life. If you want to know how a single mother ended up sleeping in the bed of a man who ran half the city's darkness, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent light above Bay 4C had been dying for 3 weeks. Maya Carter knew this because she was the one who kept writing it on the maintenance log, in the same tired blue pen, on the same clipboard nobody ever picked up. Flicker. Hum. Flicker. She stood under it at 11:47 p.m. with a styrofoam cup of coffee that had gone cold around hour 3 of her shift, and she watched a man bleed out on her gurney and thought, very calmly, that she was going to lose the house this month. Not the man. The man was beyond her. 43-year-old male, GSW to the abdomen, brought in by a woman who kept screaming a name that wasn't his. Dr. Ellison had called it at 11:41. Maya had been the one to pull the sheet up. She was always the one to pull the sheet up. Somewhere along the line that had become her specialty, and nobody had asked her if she wanted it. Carter. Nurse Denise appeared at her elbow, clipboard against her hip, eyes soft the way they got when she was about to ask something Maya couldn't afford to say yes to. Don't, Maya said. I haven't even... You were going to ask me to cover Brennan's floor shift. Brennan's kid has the flu. My kid has asthma, a PE presentation on Wednesday, and a mother who hasn't seen her awake in 4 days. Ask somebody else. Denise didn't flinch. She'd worked with Maya long enough to know her sharp edges were the only thing keeping her upright. She just pressed her lips together and nodded. You okay? I'm at work, Denise. Nobody here is okay. Denise laughed. It was a tired, ugly laugh, the kind people in scrubs traded like currency. Then she was gone, and Maya was alone again under the dying light, and the cold coffee, and the man she couldn't save. She let herself have 10 seconds. That was the deal she'd made with herself years ago, back when Lily was still in diapers and Danny was still pretending he'd come home. 10 seconds of feeling it, then back to work. 1. The man's wife hadn't been his wife. She'd been the girlfriend. The wife was in the waiting room and didn't know yet. 2. Lily had fallen asleep in the back of the Civic because the babysitter had a family emergency and Maya couldn't afford to call out. Her daughter was in the hospital parking garage right now, buckled into a booster seat with a frozen blanket and a juice box, and Maya had been checking on her every 40 minutes. 3. The electric bill was $86 past due. 4. Carter, get me a suture kit. Dr. Ellison, already moving past her, hadn't waited for the answer. Maya moved because her body had been trained to move. 10 seconds was over. 10 seconds was always over before she got to 5. By 1:12 a.m., her shoulders were locked into a single frozen slab up under her ears, and her lower back had developed that specific kind of pain that only shows up in nurses and mothers and people who have given up on sleeping flat. She swiped her badge at the staff exit and stepped out into the parking garage, and the cold hit her like someone had thrown a bucket of it at her chest. October in this city wasn't subtle. It came in hard, all wind and wet leaves and the smell of diesel off the highway 2 blocks down. She pulled her jacket tighter. The hospital's west garage was half empty at this hour. Long rows of empty spaces and a few cars belonging to the overnight staff. Her Civic was parked 4 levels up because she'd been running late at the start of the shift and all the lower spots had been taken. The elevator was out. Of course it was. The sign had been up for a week. She took the stairs. Her sneakers squeaked on the concrete. She could hear her own breathing echo, and somewhere, far off, the drip of water hitting a puddle. Every hospital parking garage she'd ever been in sounded exactly the same at this hour, like a held breath. Level 2, level 3. She thought about what she had left in the fridge. Half a rotisserie chicken. Eggs. Maybe enough milk for Lily's cereal in the morning if she watered it down. Level 4. She stepped out of the stairwell and turned the corner toward her car, digging her keys out of her bag, already thinking about the drive home, about lifting Lily out of the back seat without waking her, about the sound wasn't loud. That was the strange part. She'd think about it later, lying in bed, unable to sleep. How the first gunshot hadn't sounded like a gunshot at all. It had sounded like a door slamming, a dumpster lid dropping, something small and mechanical. Then the second one, and the third, and her body knew before her brain did. She dropped. Fast, like she'd been doing it her whole life. Down behind the dark SUV parked in the row beside her, keys pressed against her mouth so she wouldn't make a sound. Her heart wasn't beating. It was just vibrating, one long, continuous hum against the inside of her ribs. Voices. Men's voices. Not yelling. That was the worst part. That was what made it real. If they'd been yelling, she could have told herself it was a fight, a mugging, something with edges she understood. But they weren't yelling. They were talking. Told you what would happen if you came back. A softer voice, choking. Please, please, I didn't. Don't do that. Maya pressed her forehead to the cold metal of the SUV. She could see them if she tilted her head. 3 men. No, 4. Standing in the open space between 2 rows of cars, maybe 30 feet from her. 3 of them on their feet, 1 on his knees. And behind them, leaning against a black car like he had all night, was a 5th man, tall. That was the first thing she registered. Tall and still, in a dark coat that looked too expensive to be in a place like this. His hands were in his pockets. He wasn't watching the man on his knees. He was watching something else. Some middle distance, some thought inside his own head. Like this wasn't happening, like he was waiting for a cab. One of the other men turned to him. Boss? The tall man didn't answer right away. He let the silence do something to the air, then quietly, do it. That was it. That was all he said. The man on his knees started to scream, and Maya clapped her own hand over her mouth to keep from screaming with him, and the 4th gunshot was louder than any of the others because she'd been waiting for it. Then nothing. Just the hum of the garage lights, her own pulse in her ears. She didn't move. She couldn't have moved if she'd wanted to. Her knees had locked up under her and she was folded against the SUV like she was part of the machinery of it. Like if she stayed small enough they wouldn't see her, wouldn't smell her, wouldn't… Lily. The thought hit her like a second gunshot. Lily was 3 floors up, in the car. Lily was 3 floors up, asleep, alone. And if these men went up to the next level, they'd walk right past the Civic and they'd see her. A different kind of fear took over. Not the kind that freezes you, the other kind. The kind mothers invent. Maya made herself breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way she taught her patients when they were going into panic. She listened. Footsteps. One set walking away. Then another. A car door opening, closing. An engine. But not all of them. Somebody had stayed. She risked one glance around the back of the SUV, just her eyes, low to the ground. The tall man was still there. He was still leaning against the black car. He had lit a cigarette. He was looking down at the body. And then, and this was the part she'd come back to again and again for the rest of her life, another body twitched, one she hadn't seen. Further back, slumped against a concrete pillar. A younger man, maybe late 20s, in a dark hoodie soaked through on one side. He made a small wet sound. The tall man looked at him, didn't move. "You're bleeding out, Teo," he said. His voice was low. Not unkind, almost bored. "I told you to stay in the car." The younger man gurgled something. It might have been a name. It might have been a prayer. Maya couldn't tell. The tall man took a long pull off the cigarette. Exhaled. He looked at his watch like a man checking how late he was for a dinner reservation. Then he pushed off the car, walked over, and crouched down in front of the wounded one. Maya could only see the back of him now, the line of his coat, the short, dark hair. "You've got maybe 4 minutes," he said, conversational. "I've got a thing across town. You want me to call someone?" The wounded man, Teo, made another sound, something that was almost a word. "That's what I thought." The tall man stood up, dusted his knees, looked around the garage, slow, patient, the way a man looks around a room he owns, and his eyes swept right across the SUV Maya was hiding behind. She didn't breathe. For a full 6 seconds, she didn't breathe. His gaze moved on. Then it came back. Settled. Lingered. He saw her shoes. She realized it the second he did. Her sneakers were sticking out from under the SUV's back bumper, white against the dark concrete, and his eyes had found them, and his whole body had gone a little more still. He didn't call out. He didn't pull a gun. He just looked at the sneakers, then straightened up and put one hand back in his pocket. "You can come out," he said. Calm, almost gentle. "I know you're there. If I was going to kill you, I'd have done it already." Maya didn't move. "Ma'am," he said, "please. I've had a long night." Something about the word please did it. Or maybe it was ma'am. Maybe it was the exhaustion in his voice, which she recognized because she'd heard the exact same exhaustion in her own voice in the break room an hour ago. Whatever it was, her body stood up before her mind had agreed to. She rose slowly from behind the SUV, hands half raised, car keys still clutched in one fist like they were a weapon, which they weren't. She got her first full look at him. He was younger than she'd assumed from the voice. Maybe mid-30s, no older. Sharp face, dark eyes set deep. A cut along his jaw that hadn't been bandaged. Blood on one cuff of the white shirt under the coat, not his. He looked at her the way you look at something that has unexpectedly survived. Not hostile, not warm, just recalculating. "Are you armed?" he said. "No." "Are you police?" "No." "What are you?" "A nurse." He took that in. Something moved in his face, not a smile, but a reconsidering. "A nurse. I work here." Her voice was not her own. It was higher, thinner. "I'm a nurse. I was going to my car. I didn't see anything. I don't know anything. I have a kid. I have a daughter in the car upstairs, and I just want to go home." She was babbling. She knew she was babbling. She couldn't stop. He watched her babble. He let her get all the way to the end of it. Then he said, "Your hands." "What?" "Your hands are shaking. Stop talking for a second." She stopped. He gestured at Teo, who was still slumped against the pillar, chest rising in short, shallow jerks. "You said you're a nurse." "Yes." "ER?" "Trauma." Something flickered in his eyes. A calculation. A door opening. "How long does he have?" Maya's head turned toward the wounded man before her brain caught up with what was being asked. It was an involuntary thing. The way her training pulled her body before her fear could. She took 2 steps forward and realized she was doing it and stopped. "I can't," she started. "How long?" She looked, really looked. Teo's hoodie was dark red down the entire left side. His face was gray. His breathing was doing that thing where the chest moved but nothing was really happening. 4 minutes is optimistic, she said, and hated that her voice had gone flat and clinical, because that was what her voice did when she looked at a wound. "He's got a belly bleed, maybe 2. He needs an OR and a transfusion, and he's not going to get them." "If he had them?" She stared at him. "What?" "If he had them. If you had what you needed. Could you keep him alive long enough to get him somewhere that isn't a hospital?" That's not yes or no." And here was the moment. Here was the exact photographable moment that she would come back to in the worst hours of the worst nights for the rest of her life, trying to understand the woman who had made the choice. She could have said no. No was easy. No was true. No meant she got in her car and drove home and never saw this man again. And either Teo died here, or the tall man called somebody who called somebody, and she had nothing to do with any of it. But she was 29 years old and her daughter was asleep 3 levels up in a car she still owed $4,000 on. And she'd watched a man die on her table 3 hours ago whose girlfriend wasn't his wife. And somewhere deep under the rubble of her exhaustion was a small, cold voice that had been waiting for something, anything, to crack the shape of her life open. "Maybe," she said. "Yes, if I had supplies." "Maybe." The tall man nodded once, like she'd given him the weather. He took a phone out of his inside pocket and made a call. Whoever answered didn't say hello. "I need a van at the west garage of St. Bridget's, level 4, 5 minutes, and bring the bag from the house on Ferris." A pause. "No. Alive, actually. Bring it." He hung up, looked at her again. Up close, she could see that the dark of his eyes was actually a very deep brown, almost black, and there was something wrong with them, something too quiet, like a pond with no fish in it. "What's your name, what?" he said. "Maya." "Maya what?" "Carter." "Maya Carter. I'm Lucy Yen. You're about to do me a favor, and I'm about to do you one. Do you understand?" She didn't. She really, genuinely didn't. "I don't—" "You're going to help me keep him alive until my people get here. Then you're going to walk to your car, drive home with your daughter, and forget what you saw tonight. And I'm going to make sure that nobody ever knows you were in this garage. You understand?" She nodded, because what else was she going to do? "Say it." "I understand." "Good." He glanced at Teo, then stopped standing there. "Say it." She worked on instinct. Pressure first. She knelt in blood that was already sticky, tore open the soaked hoodie, saw the wound, knew immediately it was worse than she'd hoped. Upper abdomen, probably through the liver. She packed it with the only thing she had, which was a wad of gauze from the emergency kit in her own bag. The cheap one she carried for Lily's scraped knees, which was suddenly the most expensive thing she owned. Lucian watched. He didn't help. He didn't offer. He just watched. The cigarette burning down in his hand, forgotten. "Talk to him," she said, pressing. "What?" "Talk to him. Keep him conscious. What's his name again? Teo?" A pause. "Yeah. So talk to him." Lucian looked down at the younger man like he'd been asked to do something in a language he didn't speak. Then he crouched, slowly, and said, "Teo, hey, open your eyes." The kid's eyes fluttered. "Yeah, there you are. You're going to be okay. Nurse says you're going to be okay, and I believe her, so you're going to be okay. You with me?" "Boss, I know. Shut up." Something caught in Maya's chest watching him say it. The shut up came out rough, but the hand that came down on the kid's shoulder was steady. He kept it there. He didn't move it. "I'm with you," he said to Teo. "I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I'm right here." Maya looked down at the wound, then up at the man whose hand was on a dying boy's shoulder, and for 1 second, one dangerous, unprofessional, irretrievable second, she forgot to be afraid of him. Then the van came up the ramp. 2 men got out. They didn't say anything to her. They looked at Lucien, and Lucien nodded, and they loaded Teo onto a stretcher they'd brought with them, and the whole transfer took less than 90 seconds. Maya stepped back, her hands and forearms slicked to the elbow with blood that wasn't hers, her own breath coming loud. One of the men held out a towel to her. She took it without looking at him. Lucien came back to her while they were loading Teo into the van. He stopped maybe 2 feet away. He looked at her hands, at the blood drying in the creases of her knuckles, at the thin gold chain around her neck with a little enameled ladybug on it, the one Lily had given her last Mother's Day. "Ladybug," he said. "It's my daughter's." He nodded, slowly. "How old?" 6. "What's her name?" Maya didn't want to say it. Saying it to him felt like handing him something, but he had just watched her save a man she had every reason to leave dying, and there was a strange unspoken weight between them that she didn't know how to refuse. Lily, he repeated. He let the name sit in the air between them like he was checking its weight. Then he reached into his inside coat pocket and she flinched, couldn't help it, and he saw her flinch and slowed down. Hands visible. He pulled out a plain white envelope and held it out to her. "Take it." "What is that?" "It's for your gas bill." She stared at him. "My." "Or your electric, or whatever. I don't care, it's not a bribe. If I wanted your silence, I could get it other ways. This is a thank you." "I don't—" "Take it, Maya." It was the way he said her name. Quiet, flat, no flourish. Like he had decided in the last 11 minutes that her name was now something he knew. She took the envelope. Her hand was shaking so hard she almost dropped it. He looked at her one more time, long, unhurried, like he was committing her face to something more permanent than memory. "Go home," he said. "Don't come back to this garage after dark. And Maya, if anybody ever asks, you left work at 10:30 and you drove straight home. You didn't see anybody. You didn't do anything. You got home, you put your daughter to bed, and you went to sleep. Okay? Say it." "I left at 10:30. I drove home. I didn't see anything. Good girl. Something in her flinched at that too, but not the way it had before. He turned and walked toward the black car. The van was already pulling away. The body on the concrete, the one he'd ordered killed, was being rolled into a heavy tarp by one of the remaining men. Professional, efficient, like someone cleaning up after a dinner party. Maya stood there with her bloody hands and the envelope clutched against her chest, and she watched Lucien Voss. Although she didn't know his last name yet, she wouldn't know it for 3 more days, open the driver's side door of the black car and pause. He looked back at her over the roof. "Go get your daughter," he said. Then he got in, and the car pulled away, and the garage was empty except for her and the stain on the concrete and the sound of the fluorescent light humming over her head. She didn't remember the walk up to the Civic. She remembered standing outside the car, fumbling with the keys, unable to make her hand work. She remembered looking through the back window and seeing Lily curled up with her frozen blanket and her cheeks flushed from sleep, little mouth open, one sock half off. She remembered crying very quietly, with her forehead pressed against the cold window of her own car, because her daughter was alive and asleep and hadn't heard a single thing, hadn't known for 1 second that her mother had just kneeled in blood in a garage 4 stories below. She wiped her face with the inside of her jacket. She got in. She drove home. 31 minutes on empty back roads because she couldn't risk the highway, couldn't risk anybody looking at her through a car window and seeing what she looked like. She carried Lily from the car to the apartment, and her daughter woke up just enough to mumble, "Mommy, you smell weird." And Maya said, "Sorry, baby, I spilled coffee on myself." And Lily said, "Gross," and went back to sleep against her shoulder. She laid her daughter in bed. She kissed her forehead. She stood there for a long time in the doorway, watching Lily breathe. Then she went into the bathroom. She took her scrubs off. She got in the shower with the water too hot, and she scrubbed her forearms until the skin was pink, and she let herself cry, really cry this time, not the 10-second kind, for maybe 3 minutes. That was all she could afford. Then she got out, put on sweatpants and an old t-shirt of Danny's that she'd never thrown out for reasons she didn't examine, and went into the kitchen. The envelope was still in her jacket pocket. She took it out, sat at the kitchen table. The clock on the microwave said 3:04 a.m. She opened it. She had been expecting maybe $300. Enough for a gas bill, like he'd said. Inside the envelope were 50 crisp $100 bills. $5,000. Banded together with a paper strip, the kind that comes out of a bank, except there was no bank name on it. Just the number 5,000 in a small black font. Her fingers went numb. She put the money back in the envelope. She put the envelope on the table. She stood up. She walked to the window. She looked out at the parking lot of her apartment building, at the broken streetlight she'd been complaining about to the super for 2 months, at a man in a dark jacket walking a dog at 3:04 in the morning, and she thought very clearly, I am not going to spend this. She thought it over and over. I am not going to spend this. I will throw it away. I will take it to the church. I will burn it. Then she thought about Lily's asthma inhaler, which cost $84 and wasn't covered anymore because the insurance had changed in August. Then she thought about the electric bill. Then she thought about the tires on the Civic, which had been bald since July. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window. A small, ugly sound came out of her throat. It. 3 days later, when she was finally able to breathe again, when she'd almost convinced herself that she'd imagined it all, a woman in scrubs she didn't recognize walked up to her at the cafeteria coffee station and said, "Excuse me, you're Carter, right? Trauma?" "Yeah." The woman slid a folded piece of paper across the counter, the way you'd slide it to someone who was trying to catch a bus, and walked away without another word. Maya watched her go. She didn't see her face again. She would look through every employee record she could access that week, and she would not find the woman anywhere. She unfolded the paper in the women's bathroom of the 3rd floor, in a stall, with the door locked and her heart doing something stupid in her chest. It was an address. Nothing else. An address on the east side of the city, in a neighborhood she'd never been to, and underneath it, in a hand that was sharp and cramped and somehow exactly like the voice she'd heard in the garage, 3 words, Sunday, 9 p.m., L. She stared at the paper for a long time. Her mouth was dry. The bathroom smelled like bleach and someone's overripe banana in the trash can. "You don't have to go," she told herself. Then, "You already know you're going." She folded the paper. put it in the pocket of her scrubs, walked back out to the floor, finished her shift. On the drive home, she passed the billboard for Lily's school, the one with the little smiling kids and the slogan about building tomorrow's leaders. Lily's fall tuition was due in 11 days. Maya hadn't told her yet that she might not be going back. At the red light on 4th and Marigold, she put her hand flat against the pocket with the paper in it. She could feel it through the fabric. 4 clean folds, an address, a time, a single letter signed at the bottom like a knife mark on a tree. The light turned green. She kept driving. On Sunday night, she told the sitter she was picking up a shift, and she kissed Lily goodbye, and she sat in the Civic in the apartment parking lot for 11 minutes before she put it in gear because some part of her still thought she might not go, right up until the moment she did. The address took her to a 3-story brownstone in a block of 3-story brownstones on a street lined with sycamores that were losing their leaves all at once. There were no cars out front. The building had no sign. She parked across the street, checked her face in the rear view, hated what she saw, and got out anyway. The door opened before she knocked. A man she'd never seen before nodded her through. He didn't search her. He didn't ask her name. Inside the building was nothing like its outside. Everything was wood and dim light, and somewhere, faintly, the smell of old cigar smoke. He led her down a hallway, up a flight of stairs, and stopped at a set of double doors. He knocked once. A voice inside said, "Come." The man opened the door, gestured her in, closed it behind her without ever making eye contact. Lucien was at a desk by the window. Not behind it, but sitting on the edge of it, a glass in one hand. No jacket this time. A white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to just below the elbow, and she could see the edge of something dark on his forearm. A tattoo, maybe, or a scar. He looked up when she came in. He didn't smile. He didn't stand. "Maya Carter," he said. "Lucien. You came. You didn't exactly give me a phone number to RSVP." A small sound from him that wasn't quite a laugh, but might have been related to one once. He set the glass down on the desk, nodded her to the chair across from him. She sat. Her knees were doing something humiliating, a visible tremor, but she crossed her legs tight and pretended they weren't. "How's Teo?" she said before he could speak. She hadn't planned to ask. He tilted his head slightly, considered her. "Alive. He's in a bed somewhere with a lot of tubes. Whether he stays alive is not your concern." "It kind of is." "No," he said. "It isn't. I need you to understand that, Maya, before we start. Whatever happens to anyone you ever touch in the work I'm about to offer you, it is never your concern. It is mine. You don't carry it. You do your job, and you walk out of the room. That's the only way this works. The work you're about to offer me, yes. And if I say no..." He looked at her for a long moment. The lamp on the desk threw half his face into shadow. "Then you go home," he said, "and you never hear from me again. And nothing bad happens to you, or your daughter, or your mother in Rochester, or your sister-in-law in Queens who babysits on Thursdays, or the woman who runs Lily's after-school program. Nothing." She had not told him any of those things. Not one. She felt the blood drain out of her face so fast she got dizzy. He watched it happen. He didn't enjoy it, which was somehow worse than if he had. He just watched, the way a doctor watches a reflex test. "I'm not threatening you," he said quietly. "I want to be extremely clear about that. I'm telling you what I already know so that you can make your decision with all the facts. I don't want a partner who doesn't understand the shape of the room she's walking into. Do you understand?" She nodded. She didn't trust her voice. "Say it, Maya. I understand." "Good." He reached behind him on the desk and picked up a small leather bag, set it on the wood between them. It was the kind of bag a country doctor might have carried in an old movie. "In that bag is $10,000 in cash. If you walk out the door right now, you keep it. Call it compensation for your time the other night. For your discretion. Gone. Done. No strings. And if I stay, then every week, for as long as we have an arrangement, a bag like that one appears somewhere you can find it. Different places. Never here. Your daughter will go to any school you want her to go to. Your mother's rent is paid. Your car gets fixed. And once a week, sometimes twice, you go to an address I give you, and you do for someone else what you did for Teo. No records, no names you don't need, no questions. And in return, I own your silence, forever. Not your loyalty, not your soul. I don't want those, just your silence. If you ever speak about anything you see, to anyone, under any circumstance, including a deathbed, including a priest, including your daughter when she is 40, and asking, the arrangement ends, and the protection ends, and I cannot guarantee what happens next. I want to say I could. I can't. Maya sat very still. The room was quiet. Outside, a car passed. Its headlights slid across the wall above Lucian's head and were gone. She thought about Lily, about the inhaler, about the frozen blanket, about the way her daughter had mumbled "you smell weird" and not known. She thought about the man on her table 3 nights ago, whose girlfriend wasn't his wife. She thought about the woman she had been at 11:46 p.m. on a Tuesday, standing under a flickering fluorescent light, writing bulb out on a clipboard no one would read. That woman was gone. She had been gone from the moment she'd made the decision to stand up from behind that SUV instead of staying hidden, and Maya understood that now, looking at Lucien Voss across a desk in a room in a house she'd never find again if she tried. "Why me?" she said. He looked at her for a long time. "Because you stood up," he said, "and then you knelt down. And you did it in that order." It was the closest thing to a compliment she had ever received from a man in her entire life, and she hated him a little for it. She hated herself more. She reached across the desk and pulled the bag toward her. It was heavier than she'd expected. Lucien watched her do it. Something flickered at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. Something older than a smile. "Welcome, Maya Carter," he said. Outside, the wind picked up, and a sycamore leaf tapped once, twice, against the window pane, and somewhere in the next room a clock she couldn't see started chiming the hour, low and soft, 11 slow notes into the dark. The first address came on a Wednesday, 7 days after she'd walked out of the brownstone with a leather bag heavier than her own child. It came the same way the first note had. A woman she didn't recognize stopped her near the vending machine on the second floor, said, "You dropped this, honey," and pressed a folded square of paper into her hand before walking off like she hadn't done anything. By the time Maya thought to look at the woman's badge, she was already gone around the corner. The paper said, "Tonight, 11:15, 2144 Kestrel, back door." Maya stood there for a long time, the vending machine humming beside her, a bag of pretzels still unbought in the slot. Nurse Denise walked by and waved, and Maya waved back without seeing her. Somewhere in her body, a switch had flipped that she couldn't find again. She finished her shift. She picked up Lily from Mrs. Alvarado's apartment down the hall, made her mac and cheese from the box, watched her eat it while asking about her day in a voice that sounded almost normal. Lily talked about a girl named Priya who had brought a lizard to school in a shoebox. Maya nodded and laughed in the right places and watched her daughter's mouth move and felt, for the first time in her life, like she was watching her own kid through glass. At 10:40, she kissed Lily goodnight, told her Mrs. Alvarado was coming over because Mommy had to pick up an extra shift, and drove east across the river. 2144 Kestrel was a squat brick building on a block where half the streetlights didn't work. The back door she'd been told about was in an alley off the loading dock, and when she pulled into the alley, her headlights lit up a man in a dark jacket leaning against the brick next to the door, smoking. He didn't move when her car came in. He just lifted one hand lazily, palm out, then pointed at a parking spot behind a dumpster. She parked. She got out. Her knees felt like they belonged to someone else. "Nurse?" the man said. "Yes." He nodded at the door. "He's inside. Don't touch anything you don't have to." She stepped past him and into a room that had probably, at some point in its life, been the break room of a small warehouse. There was a round table in the middle with a checked vinyl tablecloth on it, and on the tablecloth, on top of a folded blue sheet, was a man. He was maybe 40, shirtless, conscious. A through and through in his upper thigh, packed with something she immediately recognized as the wrong thing. There were 2 other men in the room. One was seated at the table, hands folded like he was the patient's priest. The other was standing behind Lucien. Lucien was leaning against the counter by the microwave, arms crossed, same dark coat, different shirt. He looked up when she came in, and for a half second she got the strange, inappropriate impression that he was relieved to see her, though his face didn't move. "Maya. Who packed this?" He did. Maya set her bag on the counter. It's going to have to come out. All of it. Whatever you put in there. Whose idea was the sock? It's not a sock, the seated man said. It's a bandana. It's an infection with a wick in it. Does he speak English? Yes, the man on the table said in a thick, tight voice. Great. Hi, I'm Maya. I'm going to take out the bandana and flush the wound, and it's going to feel worse than it did when you got shot, and I'm sorry about that in advance. What's your name? Sal? Sal, when did this happen? Maybe 4 hours. You've been sitting on a 4-hour leg wound with a bandana in it in the back of a car. Okay, that's great. That's the kind of decision that gives me something to do on a Wednesday. She pulled gloves from her bag, the nitrile ones from the hospital supply room that she hadn't exactly signed out. Is he on blood thinners for anything? No. Allergies. Penicillin. Good, I don't have any. Lucien. He uncrossed his arms. What? Hold his shoulders. He did. Didn't ask why. Didn't protest. He came around the table, stood at the head, put both hands on Sal's shoulders, and nodded at her. She went to work. It wasn't a clean job. She didn't have half of what she'd want, and the kitchen light was terrible. And Sal, who had been tough about the bandana, turned out to be very not tough about the flush. He bucked under Lucien's hands at one point, and Maya heard Lucien say very quietly, right into his ear, Hey, you look at me. You do not look at her. Look at me. Sal looked at him. Good, Lucien said. We're almost there. Something moved under Maya's sternum, watching it. She couldn't have named the thing. She pressed her lips together and kept working. When she was done, Sal's leg was packed properly, wrapped properly, and he was drinking a glass of water the seated man had brought him, hands still shaking. Maya peeled off her gloves and dropped them in a plastic bag. She didn't look at Lucien. He needs antibiotics. Real ones. Not whatever you people are giving each other. Amoxicillin clavulanate twice a day for 10 days, and he needs to elevate that leg when he sleeps. And if he starts running a fever over 101, he needs a real hospital. And I don't care what you have to tell them to get him one. Understood. I mean it. I'm not doing this again on the same leg in 3 days. Understood, Maya. She washed her hands in the little sink by the microwave. The soap was pink and smelled like a gas station. She dried her hands on a paper towel that was scratchy. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. Maya, Lucien said. She stopped with her hand on the knob. Thank you. She didn't turn around. She opened the door. She walked out. In the alley, her car seemed very small. She sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before she could put the key in the ignition, because her hand kept missing. When she finally got it started, she drove 3 blocks with the windows down even though it was 40 degrees out, because she couldn't catch her breath. And she pulled over into the parking lot of a closed laundromat and put her head down on the steering wheel and didn't cry, exactly, but made a sound she hadn't made since the night Danny had told her he was leaving. Then she drove home. She paid Mrs. Alvarado in cash, $20 more than the usual, and said, Thank you, really, thank you. And Mrs. Alvarado looked at her a second too long with those kind, tired eyes and said, You look like you need to eat something, mija. I will. Eat something, Mrs. Alvarado said, and patted her cheek and left. Maya stood in her kitchen alone. The microwave clock said 2:14 a.m. There was a new envelope on the counter, which had not been there when she left. She had no idea how it had gotten into her apartment. She didn't want to know. She counted it with gloves on for reasons she couldn't explain. $2,000. The weeks folded into each other like bedsheets. A call, an address, a wound. Sometimes 1 a week. Sometimes 2. Once, 3 in a single stretch, and she'd shown up at the last one at 4 in the morning with blood already dried in the cuticle of her thumb from the second, and Lucien had looked at her and said, Go home. I'll have someone else deal with this one. You don't have someone else. I'll find someone. Lucien. Maya. I'm here. I might as well finish. He had looked at her then the way you look at a person who has just told you something about themselves they didn't mean to. He didn't argue. He let her work. She learned things she'd never intended to learn. She learned the difference between a knife wound made by someone who meant it and a knife wound made by someone who'd panicked. She She learned which of his men had a high pain tolerance and which were babies about needles. She learned the name of the young one with the gap in his front teeth, Rafi, who was always making jokes while she stitched him and was terrified of tetanus for reasons he'd never explain. She learned that Teo, the kid from the garage, had actually lived. He still walked with a slight drag on the left side, but he lived, and the first time she saw him again, in a warehouse in Greenpoint, he'd looked up at her from the folding chair he was sitting in and said, "You're her. Tapitrum. I'm her." "Hey," he'd said, and put his hand over his heart, and didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. Lucien was there each time. That was the other thing she learned. He didn't have to be. He had an entire machine of people who moved bodies and made calls and stood at doors. But when she showed up, he showed up. She stopped commenting on it around the 3rd week. By the 5th, she had started, without consciously admitting it, looking for him when she walked in. By the 7th, she had started noticing when he wasn't standing in the same place he'd been standing the last time, and adjusting to find him. He was always quiet when she worked. Never flinched, never turned away, even when it was bad. Once, patching up a man with a shredded shoulder, she had heard the man beg, and she had heard Lucien say, without looking at her, "Don't listen to that, Maya. Just work." And she had kept working, and she had hated him for being right. She had also, that same night, laughed with him. That was the part she didn't understand later. They had been waiting for her kit to be resupplied, and he had poured himself a whiskey and asked her, out of nowhere, what her last name used to be. Used to be? Before Carter. "How do you know Carter isn't my maiden name?" "I checked." She had stared at him, and then, against every instinct, she had laughed. A short, exhausted, disbelieving laugh. "Delaney. Delaney. My dad was from Queens, big Irish mess of a man. Died when I was 10. I'm sorry." "Don't be. He wasn't much of a father." He turned the glass in his hand. "No. He hit my mom. I don't miss him. I miss the version of him that was on TV in my head when I was 6, before I knew better. But the real one? No." He had looked at her for a long moment. "That's an honest answer. You asked. Most people would have lied. Most people never had to get this tired." He had almost smiled at that. Almost. She had watched his face and understood for the first time that the thing under his stillness wasn't cruelty, and it wasn't absence. It was something more private than that, and it was not going to introduce itself. It was the kind of thing she'd seen in certain patients, in the ICU, in the middle of the night, when they thought the curtain was all the way closed. A thing that had decided a long time ago that it was going to live alone. She had looked away before he caught her looking. The money stabilized her life in ways she hadn't expected. The electric didn't get cut off. The tires on the Civic got replaced, and then the brakes. Lily's inhaler refilled itself every month without a phone call to the insurance company because Maya just paid cash for it at the pharmacy on 12th. The asthma doctor, the dentist, the tuition. She paid them all, on time, in person. And each time she did, she expected someone behind the counter to look at her funny, to ask where the money had come from, and no one ever did, because people in this city had stopped asking that question a long time ago. She told her mother she'd gotten a raise. Her mother said, "About time, honey," and Maya had put down the phone and stared at the ceiling of her apartment and felt something close to peace and hated herself for the shape of it. Lily started doing better in school. That was the strangest thing. The 100 small stresses that Maya hadn't realized she was transmitting through the air of the apartment. The tight shoulders when the mail came, the way she'd snapped at Lily for leaving a light on, the dinners that were only rice. They were gone now, and Lily, who was 6, had absorbed their absence without knowing what had changed. She brought home a drawing from school in October. A green house with a yellow sun and 3 stick figures, one tall with brown hair, one small with a bow in it, and a third one, off to the side, taller than the first, in a long black line. "Who's this, baby?" "I don't know, just a guy." "Why did you draw him?" "I don't know, he's just there." Maya had put the drawing on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. Then she had stood in the kitchen for a long time looking at it, and then she had taken it down and folded it in half and put it in the drawer with the takeout menus where Lily wouldn't look for it. That night, for the first time in 3 months, she dreamed about Lucien. It wasn't about sex, which surprised her when she woke up and could remember most of it. It was about him sitting at her kitchen table drinking coffee from the mug she'd bought at the zoo, and Lily walking past him in her pajamas and saying hi, and him saying hi back, and Maya watching from the doorway and thinking, no, no, no. She made herself get up. She made coffee. She drank it. She did not go to the drawer and look at the drawing again. She almost did. She didn't. The 7th week, something shifted. She'd been called to an apartment on the north side, 3rd floor of a walk-up above a bodega. When she got there, it was just him. No patient. No men at the door. Just Lucien in a chair by the window, in the kind of shirt she'd never seen him in before. A soft gray one, no collar, sleeves pushed up, drinking something amber out of a heavy glass. She'd stopped in the doorway. "Where's the patient?" "There isn't one." "Then why am I here?" He'd looked at her. "Because I wanted to talk to you without someone bleeding." "I don't like games, Lucien." "Neither do I." She stood there. He didn't get up. He didn't offer her a drink. He just watched her decide what to do with herself. And finally she came in because she wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of driving home angry. "Sit." "I'm not your soldier." "I didn't say you were. Sit, please." She sat. The room was small and tidy and had almost nothing in it. A couch. The chair he was in. A table. A lamp that was on low. The window behind him looked out onto the street, and she could see the rain that had started while she was driving, and a man across the street unloading a truck full of flats of eggs into the bodega below them. "You've been doing this for 6 weeks, he said. 7. 7. Almost 8, actually. Almost 8. How do you feel?" "Tired." "That's not what I'm asking." She looked at him. "I know what you're asking." He waited. "I'm compromised," she said finally. "Is that what you want me to say? I'm sleeping 3 hours a night. I flinched at a tray dropping in the cafeteria today. I almost snapped at my daughter on Tuesday because she asked me a question twice. That's what I feel. I feel like I'm being hollowed out with a spoon and I'm the one holding it. Does that answer the question?" He didn't answer for a long time. "You can stop," he said. "Any time. You know that." "No, I can't." "You can. If I stop, you owe me nothing." "I'll owe you plenty. I pay out either way." "Don't be insulting." Something crossed his face that might have been surprise. "I don't know what you think this is," she said. She kept her voice flat, because if she let it do what it wanted to do, it was going to break. "I don't know what kind of fantasy you have in your head about me. The brave, tired nurse with the kid. I'm not brave, Lucien. I'm cornered. There's a difference. And you knew there was a difference when you put that bag on the desk. So don't sit there and tell me I can walk away like I'm at a job I hate, like this is a shift at Starbucks. Because I'm in it now, and you know I'm in it. And I think on some level you wanted me in it, so let's not pretend anymore." She hadn't planned to say any of that. She hadn't even known any of it was inside her. When she stopped, her hands were shaking in her lap, and the rain against the window was suddenly very loud. He set his glass down on the table very carefully, as if he didn't trust his own hand. "You're right," he said. "I know I'm right. I don't have a fantasy about you." "Okay. I have a problem about you." She didn't say anything. "I've been running this piece of the city for 9 years. I've had a lot of people do things for me. I have never, in those 9 years, looked forward to a Tuesday, because someone I didn't grow up with might be in a room I'm going to be in. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Don't do that. I'm not trying to seduce you, Maya. I'm explaining something to you because you asked me to stop pretending. I didn't ask you to tell me that. You asked me to be honest. That's what honesty looks like from where I'm sitting." She stood up. Her legs were not entirely under her control. She walked to the window and looked out at the man unloading eggs. The rain had gotten heavier. She could see her own reflection in the dark pane, blurred and crooked, and behind it the reflection of the room, and behind that, Lucien, sitting very still in his chair. "I have a daughter," she said. To the window. Not to him. "I know. She has a father, not a good one, not one who's around, but she has one and she has a picture of him and she asks about him sometimes. She doesn't need another man in her life who's whatever this would be. I'm not asking to be in her life." "Then what are you asking?" The rain, the eggs, the man on the street coughed, and she heard it through the glass. I don't know, Lucy Yen said, and she heard in his voice for the first time something that wasn't certainty. I'm trying to figure that out. I wanted you to know where I was at before I did. She closed her eyes. She leaned her forehead against the cold glass. I can't do this, she said. Okay. I mean it, Lucien. I heard you. If you can't keep this work separate from the other thing, then I have to stop. I can't. I'm already barely standing up. I'm already lying to everyone I love. I can't add this, whatever this is. I can't. Understood. She waited for him to argue. He didn't. He just sat there. She turned around. He was looking at his glass, not at her. His profile was sharp in the lamplight. For one moment, she had a vivid, unwanted image of the boy he must have been at some point, before whatever had happened to him had happened, and she had to look away because her body wanted to cross the room, and she wasn't going to let it. I should go, she said. Okay. Please don't send me anywhere this week. I won't. She walked toward the door. At the door, her hand on the knob. And it was the second time she had done this. The second time she had stood at a door in one of his rooms with her hand on the knob, and she had a flash of the first time, and a flash of all the other times there were probably going to be. And she stopped. Lucien. Yeah. I'm not saying no. Do you understand? I'm saying I can't. Those aren't the same thing. I know. If I'm saying no one day, you'll know. I'll tell you. Okay, Maya. She left. She took the stairs two at a time because the stairwell had the old smell of piss and fried onions, and it was a good smell for what she was feeling, a smell that was not going to let her have any pretty thoughts about anything. She got in her car. She sat there. She did not put her head on the steering wheel this time. She drove home. Lily was asleep. Mrs. Alvarado was watching a telenovela with the sound low, and she looked up when Maya came in, and she looked at Maya's face, and she did not say, "Are you okay?" because Mrs. Alvarado was 72 years old and had raised 4 boys and had the sense not to ask questions she didn't want the answers to. Did she eat? She ate the chicken. All of it? Not the green things. Okay. She asked if you were going to be home for the school thing on Friday. Maya closed her eyes. The thing. The little play. With the pumpkins. I'll be home. Tell her I'll be home. I'll tell her. Mrs. Alvarado gathered her things. At the door she stopped, one hand on Maya's arm. Her grip was soft, but not weak. You're a good mother, mija. Maya didn't answer. She couldn't. You hear me? You're a good mother, whatever else you are, that you are. Thank you, Senora. The old woman left. Maya locked the door behind her. She stood in the middle of her living room for a long time. She looked at the coffee table. She looked at the blanket Lily had left on the couch. She looked at the little plastic bin of crayons on the floor, one of them snapped in half, the purple one, because Lily pressed too hard when she was concentrating. She sat down on the floor next to the bin. She picked up the broken purple crayon. She started to cry. Not loudly. She had gotten very good at not crying loudly. She cried with her teeth locked together and one hand over her mouth and her eyes shut, and the crayon in her other hand snapped and stubby and perfect. After a while, she stopped. She put the crayon back in the bin. She went to bed. On Friday, she sat in a folding chair in the auditorium of Lily's school and watched her daughter, dressed as a pumpkin, forget the one line she'd been assigned, freeze for 2 whole seconds, make eye contact with Maya in the 3rd row, and then make up a different line that was twice as good as the one on the script. The other parents laughed. Maya laughed. Her jaw ached afterwards from laughing, because it was the first time in weeks she'd laughed in public, and her face wasn't used to it anymore. Afterwards, out in the parking lot, Lily held her hand very tight. Mommy? Yes, baby. Are you okay? I'm great. Why? You were kind of crying when I did my line. Those were good tears. You were amazing. Lily considered this. Was I better than Priya? You were better than everybody. Priya's was good too, though. Priya's was also good. Lily swung her hand. Mommy. Yeah. Can we get pancakes? It's 4:30 in the afternoon. So, yes, we can get pancakes. They got pancakes. They sat in a booth at the diner on Mercer, which Lily had decided was her favorite place on Earth because there was a plastic dinosaur on top of the milkshake machine. And Maya watched her daughter drown her stack in syrup, and for 40 minutes she forgot everything. All of it. The garage, the bag of money, the man in the gray shirt, the broken purple crayon. And then, as she was paying the bill, her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out knowing, with a certainty she couldn't explain, that it was an address. It wasn't. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. One line. Come Tuesday. I'll stay in the other room. L. She stood at the counter with her receipt in one hand and her phone in the other, and the plastic dinosaur watching her from the milkshake machine, and her daughter tugging at her coat asking if they could take a pancake home for Mrs. Alvarado, and she read the message 3 times. She didn't answer it. On Sunday, she almost did. She had her thumb over the screen. She didn't. On Monday, while her daughter was at school and she was supposed to be folding laundry, she sat on the edge of her bed and read the message one more time, and she typed "okay" and hit send before she could talk herself out of it. He didn't answer. That was the thing that made her stomach drop. He just didn't answer. But on Tuesday night, when she walked into a loft on Grand Street where a man she'd never met was lying on a couch with a punctured lung, Lucien was not there. He wasn't there the week after either, or the one after that. He kept his word the way he kept everything else. Exactly. By the 4th week, she started leaving the lights on a second longer in whatever room she was walking into. By the 6th, she'd stopped telling herself she wasn't doing it. By the 8th, when she finally walked into a back office in a club in Midtown and saw him standing by a window with his back to her, the air in her chest did something that had nothing to do with the patient on the desk. He turned around. He didn't come toward her. Maya? Lucien. He nodded. That was all. He nodded, and he stepped back, and he made room for her to work. She worked. When she was done, she packed up her bag without looking at him, because she was afraid of what her face would do, and she walked out of the office and down the hall and out the back of the club into an alley that smelled like old beer and wet cardboard. He caught up with her 3 steps from her car. Maya. She stopped. I'm not going to touch you, he said. His voice was very low. I'm not going to ask you anything. I just wanted to say thank you for coming and for whatever it cost you to come. She did not turn around. Lucien. Yeah. Don't disappear again. A long silence. A car went past the mouth of the alley, headlights raking the wall, and her shadow and his stretched long and then vanished. Okay, he said, quiet, almost gentle. I won't. She nodded once and got in her car and drove away without looking in the mirror. That night, when she got home, Lily was already asleep. Mrs. Alvarado had left a foil-wrapped plate of something on the counter with a note that just said, eat. Maya ate standing up, at the counter, in the dark, and when she was done, she went to the drawer with the takeout menus, and she took out Lily's drawing and unfolded it. The green house, the yellow sun, 3 stick figures, the tall one off to the side, in the long black line. She looked at it a long time. Then she folded it again, very carefully, and she put it back in the drawer. She did not put it on the fridge. Not yet. He kept his word the way she'd asked him to, which turned out to be worse, in a way, than if he'd broken it. He was there every time now. He was never in the same room as her unless a patient was on the table between them. He didn't stand closer than 8 feet from her. He didn't offer her a drink. He didn't ask her about her week. He asked her only clinical questions, in a voice pared down to the bone. And when she answered, he nodded once and looked at whichever of his men needed looking at, and the conversation was over. It was a kind of surgery he was performing on himself. And she watched him do it with the unwanted professional eye of a woman who had watched a lot of men try to cut things out of themselves over the years. It wasn't going to work. She knew it wasn't going to work. She also knew that her knowing wasn't going to make it stop. November tipped into December. The city got colder, meaner, more beautiful at night. Maya started carrying a second coat in the trunk of the Civic because she never knew if she'd be called out to a drafty warehouse or the back of a restaurant. And one night, somewhere between a stabbing in Sunset Park and an apartment off the west side, she caught herself humming. She was humming a song from one of Lily's school concerts and driving toward a man she'd never met with a bag full of contraband antibiotics on the passenger seat. And she was humming. That was the night she understood, in a way she could not take back, that she had adjusted. The human animal will adjust to almost anything if you feed it regularly and let it sleep in its own bed. She had a job now. 2 jobs. She had a rhythm. On Tuesdays, she braided Lily's hair and sat through spelling tests. On Thursdays, she sewed a piece of someone's bicep back together in a room above a Chinese bakery, while a man paid her in 20s that still smelled like somebody else's pocket. And in between, she thought about Lucien Voss. She thought about him more than she wanted to. She thought about him while she was brushing her teeth. She thought about him while Lily was telling her about Priya's hamster. She thought about him in the shower and then was furious with herself about it for 2 days, which did not stop her from thinking about him in the shower again the following week. The distance he was keeping was itself a kind of pressure. Every time she walked into a room and he didn't look up at her right away. Every time she left and he didn't follow, she felt the knot touching like a hand on the small of her back. She knew he was doing it on purpose. She knew he was giving her exactly what she had asked for. She was starting to hate him for it in a way that had nothing to do with hate. Rafi, the kid with his gap in his teeth, was the one who finally cracked it. She was stitching up a cut across the back of his shoulder in a garage in Red Hook, and he was doing his usual routine of narrating his own pain like a bad comedian, and he said without any warning at all, "You and the boss." "What?" "You and the boss, nurse." "What about us?" "You're both doing that thing." "What thing, Rafi?" "My mother used to do that thing with this guy back when I was a kid. He was a mailman. They did the same thing." "I'm going to put this needle somewhere you'll feel it if you don't shut up." He had laughed. And she had laughed. And across the garage, Lucien had looked up from the cup of coffee he wasn't drinking and looked at them and looked away. And Maya had felt her face go hot and had stabbed Rafi just a little harder than she needed to. And Rafi had yelped, and the whole garage had laughed. And for the first time in weeks, the air in the room had moved. Afterwards, Lucien walked her out. He didn't usually. She'd told him not to. He did it that night anyway. The garage opened onto a narrow cobblestone street that ran down toward the water, and you could see, between the warehouses, a slice of the harbor with a single red light blinking on a buoy somewhere out in the dark. Her breath made a cloud. She dug in her bag for her keys. "Maya." "Yeah." "Is he bothering you?" "Who, Rafi?" "No, Rafi is a child. He's 26. That's what I said." A small sound from him that was almost a laugh. "It's good," he said. "What you're doing with them. They like you. They like anybody with a hand that doesn't hit them." That one landed harder than she'd meant it to. He absorbed it the way he absorbed most things, without letting it show on his face, but she saw it in the way his jaw shifted, just once, and she felt bad. "Sorry," she said. I'm tired." "You're right, though. I didn't mean it about you." "I know." They stood in the cold. The harbor light blinked. A car came down the cobblestones and rattled past, its headlights painting his face for a second and taking it back. "How's Lily?" "Why are you asking?" "Because you look tired, and I thought she might be the reason." "She's fine." "Good." "She lost a tooth, the top one on the left. She keeps sticking her tongue in the hole, and it makes her lisp, and she's furious about it." He looked at her. She had never told him anything like that before. She didn't know why she'd said it. She didn't take it back. "That's a good problem to have," he said. "Yeah, it is." "Tell her," he started, and then stopped. "What?" "Nothing. That was stupid. Drive safe, Maya." He turned and walked back into the garage. She stood there for a second, watching his back, and then she got into the Civic and drove home with the radio off. That night, when she was pulling the covers up to Lily's chin, her daughter, half asleep, mumbled, "Mommy, the tooth fairy brought me $5. Is that too much?" "No, baby, that's exactly right. Priya's tooth fairy only brings her $1. Mine is richer." Lily made a satisfied noise and rolled over. Maya sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, one hand on her daughter's back, feeling the small, warm rise and fall of it. She did not cry, but she sat there for a while. The first time he touched her, it was an accident, and it was also not an accident at all. She was on her way out of a basement apartment in the Bronx, 2 a.m, her kid in one hand, a brown paper bag of bloody gauze in the other. He was coming in. The doorway was narrow. He turned his body, and she turned hers, the way strangers do, but the bag bumped his coat and she stumbled and his hand came up, fast, automatic, and caught her elbow. He didn't let go. She didn't move. 3 seconds, maybe 4. His hand was warm through her coat. His face was very close to hers and he was not looking at her eyes. He was looking at her mouth, and she was looking at his, and they were both pretending not to. He let go first. "Sorry," he said. "Okay. Good night, Maya." "Good night, Lucien." She walked out. She sat in the car and gripped the wheel until her knuckles went white. She drove the first 3 blocks without turning the radio on because she didn't trust any music to be the right music. Then she put on the classical station because it was safe, and then she turned that off too because one of the pieces had strings in it, and the strings were doing something stupid to her chest. She got home at 3. Mrs. Alvarado was asleep on the couch with a romance novel open on her stomach. Maya eased the book closed, put a blanket over her, and went to bed without washing her face. In the morning, she walked into her kitchen, and her hand, without her permission, went up to her own elbow, right where his hand had been. She held herself there for maybe 10 seconds. Then she made coffee. 2 weeks later, it happened again, and it wasn't an accident. She was in the back office of his building. She'd been let in by a man with a scar across his nose who had called her ma'am, and Lucien had been on the phone when she'd come in, and he had waved her to the chair across from his desk and kept talking. She had sat. She had watched him, because she hadn't seen him in 10 days, and she was allowed to look at him while he was on the phone. That was a free look. The rules allowed for it. He was arguing with someone, quietly. His whole body was still, but his voice was doing the thing it did when he was angry, going softer instead of louder. "No, no, Frank, no. I don't care what he offered you. He offered me the same thing 6 months ago, and I passed. Because I'm not stupid, and neither are you. So," a pause. Frank, listen to me. If I hear that name in my city again next week, you and I are going to have a different conversation. Are we clear?" Another pause. "Good." He hung up. He set the phone down on the desk, very gently, like if he let go of it too fast, he'd throw it. She waited. "Sorry," he said, not looking at her. "It's fine. That wasn't for you to hear. I heard a man named Frank get told no. I'll live." He did look up at her then, and for the first time in weeks there was something in his eyes that wasn't walled off. He was tired. She had never seen him tired before. She realized, with a small shock, that she had been picturing him as a man who did not get tired, and that she had been wrong. "Why did you bring me here tonight?" she said. "I didn't know who else to—" He stopped, rubbed the bridge of his nose. That was going to be a lie. "Let me try again." "Try again, then." "I wanted to see you." "Okay. That's all." "Okay. I know what I said. I know what the deal is. I'm telling you because you asked, and I told you I'd be honest with you when you did." She sat very still. "Is there a patient?" she said. "No. There's never been a patient. These last couple of times you've been in the room when I came in. Has there?" He didn't answer. "Lucien, there's been a patient each time, but none of them needed me there." "Then why were you there?" He looked at her. He didn't say it. He didn't have to. Her throat closed up. She got up from the chair. She walked around the desk. She didn't plan any of it. She stopped in front of where he was sitting, and he tipped his head back to look at her, and she put her hand on the side of his face. His skin was warm. There was a little bit of stubble coming in. She ran her thumb, once, along his cheekbone, and felt him close his eyes under her hand. "I can't do this," she said. "I know. I'm going to do it anyway." "I know." She bent down and kissed him. His mouth was still for half a second, like he didn't believe it was happening. Then his hand came up and caught the back of her neck, and he was kissing her back, and there was nothing careful about it, nothing strategic, nothing of the man who ran the room. It was just a man kissing a woman like he had been thinking about it every day for 3 months, which he had. When she pulled back, her eyes were stinging. He was breathing harder than she was. "Maya. Don't. Maya. Please don't talk yet." He didn't. He put his forehead against her stomach, his arms around her waist, and he stayed there like that for maybe a minute, and she put her hand on the back of his head and held him there, and it was somehow more intimate than anything she'd ever done with anyone. He was the scariest man she had ever met, and he was leaning his head against her belly like a child who didn't want to go to school. After a while, he said, into the fabric of her scrub top. I'm not going to be able to keep my distance now. I know. I'm going to try, but I'm telling you. I know, Lucien. You should go home. I know. She didn't, though. Not for another 40 minutes. They didn't do anything else. They sat on the couch against the wall of his office, and she put her feet in his lap, and he held one of her feet in both of his hands like he was holding something fragile, and they talked. About nothing. About Lily's tooth. About a neighbor of his from when he was 8. About the fact that he'd never been to Florida, and he didn't want to go. About the fact that her mother made a really bad meatloaf and had never figured it out in 40 years. About the word bodega. It was the most normal she had felt in months. The most normal he had felt in years. Eventually she got up. Eventually she went home. She spent the drive home trying not to smile, which was another thing she had not felt like doing in months, and failing. That was the peak. She should have known. Anyone who had worked a trauma floor as long as she had could have told you that the patient always crashes hardest right after the first good night. It was Lily's half day at school. Maya had picked her up at noon, the way she did every third Wednesday, and they had stopped at the diner on Mercer, the one with the plastic dinosaur, because Lily had developed a belief that plastic dinosaurs made milkshakes taste better, and Maya was not going to argue with it. They were sitting in their usual booth. Lily was drawing on her placemat with the broken crayons the waitress brought over in a plastic cup. Maya had her phone face down on the table and her coffee half empty, and she was listening to her daughter explain the difference between a stegosaurus and an ankylosaurus, with a level of authority that Maya did not question, and she was happy. That was what got her later. How happy she'd been. For maybe 11 minutes. The diner was on the corner with big windows on 2 sides. Maya was facing the one that looked out at the parking lot. She saw the car pull in. A black SUV, tinted windows, the kind of car you saw in that neighborhood all the time. She didn't think anything of it. She saw the doors open. 2 men. She didn't think anything of that either for one more second. Then she saw what was in the passenger's hand, and her body moved before her brain. Get down, baby. What? Get under the table, right now. Mommy, now, Lily. There was something in Maya's voice that had never been in Maya's voice before. And it worked. Lily slid off her bench and under the table in a heap of crayons, and Maya went down with her, and she pulled her daughter into her chest and covered her with her whole body, and the window exploded. She would not later be able to tell anyone exactly what she heard. She would know there were gunshots. She would know there was glass. She would know there was a woman screaming, and she would realize sometime later that the woman had been her. Lily had been too scared to make a sound. Lily had gone completely, horribly still in her arms, and Maya had held her tighter, like if she squeezed hard enough she could pull her daughter back inside her own body. It lasted maybe 12 seconds. 12 seconds is a long time. 12 seconds is long enough to say the entire alphabet if you go slow. Then tires squealing, then nothing, then a man's voice, far away, yelling that someone had called 911. Maya did not move. She could not move. She had the weight of her daughter against her chest, and she was checking with her hands, with her fingers, with her face pressed to Lily's hair. Is she hit? Is she hit? Is she hit? And Lily was breathing. Lily was breathing. Lily was not hit. Mommy, a whisper. I'm here. I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. I've got you. I've got you. Did the glass? I don't care about the glass. Are you hurt? Lily, look at me. Are you hurt? No. Okay. Okay. Stay with me. Stay right here. She did not stand up. She stayed under the table. There was broken glass in her daughter's hair. There was broken glass in her own hair. Her arm was bleeding, she realized distantly, from somewhere above the elbow, a long, neat line of blood running down into the crook. Not bad. Not bad. She didn't care. She heard the sirens before she heard the cook from the kitchen asking, in a shaky voice, if anybody was hurt. She heard someone crying over in another booth, an older woman, maybe, a regular. She didn't look. She just kept her daughter against her chest and rocked very slightly, back and forth, under a diner table on a Wednesday afternoon in December. She didn't call the police. She didn't have to. The police came. She told them what she was able to tell them, which was almost nothing, because her brain had stopped recording somewhere around the second gunshot, and she couldn't get it to play back. The detective was a woman with kind, tired eyes, the kind of woman who had asked a lot of questions of a lot of mothers under a lot of tables. She asked Maya if she knew why anyone would want to shoot into the diner. Maya said no. The detective asked if she had any enemies. Maya said no. The detective asked if she had noticed anyone following her recently, anyone watching her, any unusual activity around her building. Maya said no, 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 no. The detective didn't believe her. Maya could see it in her face. But the detective also had a dozen other things to do before her shift ended, and a mother and a 6-year-old who had come through without a scratch were not the hardest case on her desk that day. So the detective took her number and gave her a card and told her to call if she remembered anything else. The EMTs bandaged Maya's arm. 8 stitches, they said. Not bad. Not bad. Mrs. Alvarado came and picked Lily up because Maya couldn't stop shaking hard enough to drive. Lily did not want to go with her. Lily had one hand bunched in the front of Maya's scrub top and would not let go, and Maya had to pry her fingers off one at a time, saying, "Baby, baby, I'll be right behind you. I'll be right behind you. I promise." And Lily had looked at her with eyes that were too old for her face and said, "You pinky promise?" "I pinky promise." Lily went. Maya stood in the parking lot of the diner with her arm bandaged and her sneakers crunching on the glass and watched Mrs. Alvarado's old Buick pull away with her daughter in the back seat, and she felt for the first time an actual flash of murderous rage. Not fear, not grief, rage. Clean, bright, simple rage. Her phone had been buzzing in her pocket the entire time she was talking to the detective. She hadn't looked at it. She pulled it out now. 17 missed calls. All from a number she didn't have saved. She hit the callback button. He answered on the first ring. "Maya." Maya, are you? Is she? Don't." Her voice came out like a stranger's. "Don't speak." "Okay." "You listen to me now." "I'm listening." "Somebody just shot up a diner where my daughter was drinking a vanilla milkshake." A silence on the other end, so total she could hear his breath. "I know," he said. I know. I'm in the car. I'm coming to you. Where are you?" "You don't come anywhere near me." "Maya, you don't come anywhere near me, Lucien. You don't come near my apartment. You don't come near my daughter. If I see your car on my block, I will call that detective back, the one who gave me her card, and I will tell her every name I know. Do you understand me?" "Yes." "You say it." "I understand. I'm taking my daughter. We're going somewhere you won't find us. And I swear, if anything happens to her, if one hair on her head, Maya." "What?" "It won't. I'm telling you, it won't. I'm going to make sure it won't." "I don't believe you." "I know. I trusted you." "I know, Maya. I trusted you, and you let them come to my daughter." "I didn't." "You let them come to my daughter." He didn't say anything for a long time. She was crying now, openly, standing in the parking lot. A man in a uniform was sweeping up glass behind her. The wind was cold on her wet face. "Maya," he said finally. His voice was not steady anymore. It was the first time she had ever heard his voice not be steady. "I will find them. I will find every single person involved in this. I will find the man who picked up the phone and made the call, and I will find the man who drove the car, and I will find every man who put a finger on a trigger, and I will find the man at the top of whoever's list this came off of. And what happens to them after that is not your concern. But I want you to know, you and your daughter are not going to be afraid again. Do you hear me? Do you hear me, Maya? You don't get to say that to me." "I'm saying it anyway. That's not—" She stopped. She was so tired. She was so tired. "That's not what I asked for." "I know. I never asked for this." "I know. I have to go." "Maya, please just tell me where you're going. Not for me, for someone else. For a man I trust. I'll give you a number and he'll meet you and he'll stay in his car and you will never know he's there, but he will be there. Please, I'm asking." "No, Maya." I said no. "Please." She hung up. She stood in the parking lot for another minute. Then she walked to her car and she drove the 6 blocks to her apartment on autopilot. And she went upstairs and found Lily on Mrs. Alvarado's couch with a blanket up to her chin and her eyes wide open staring at the ceiling, and Maya sat down next to her and gathered her up into her lap and rocked her, and Lily cried for the first time, really cried, big heaving sobs into Maya's shoulder, and Maya cried too. Later, when her daughter had finally fallen asleep, Maya stood at the window of Mrs. Alvarado's apartment and looked down at the street, and she saw a dark sedan parked across the way. A man in the driver's seat, not looking up, just sitting there. She stood at the window for a long time. She did not call Lucien back, but she did not call the detective either, and she knew what that meant, even if she wasn't going to say it yet. She went back to the couch. She picked her daughter up. She carried her across the hall to their own apartment, and she locked the door, and she locked the chain, and she laid her daughter down on her own bed, in her own clothes, and she lay down next to her, and she put her arm across Lily's chest, and she stared at the ceiling for a very long time. Somewhere out in the city, on a phone that wasn't hers, a man was making calls. She could feel it. She could feel every one of them. She did not know yet how many people were going to disappear in the next 48 hours on her behalf, but she knew the number was going to be more than one. And she knew, lying there with her daughter's breath warm against her ribs, that she had not yet said the thing she was going to have to say, to herself, in the quiet of her own head. She was going to have to say it tomorrow. Not tonight. Tonight she was just going to breathe, and watch her daughter breathe, and listen for any sound on the stairs outside the door, and feel the strange, terrible, shameful relief of knowing, somewhere, in a car parked across the street, a man she hadn't asked for was sitting in the dark, watching the building she lived in, because the most dangerous man in the city had put him there and was not going to take him away. Morning came in gray and slow. The kind of morning that makes a person believe, for maybe 90 seconds after waking, that the day before hadn't happened. Maya opened her eyes to the sight of her daughter's forehead 6 inches from her own, one of Lily's small hands curled in a fist on the pillow between them. For 90 seconds she lay there and didn't move and didn't think. Then she turned her head and saw the bandage on her own arm, and the 90 seconds were over. She got up without waking Lily. She walked barefoot across the cold floor to the window. The dark sedan was still parked across the street. Same angle. Same man behind the wheel. She didn't know if it was the same man or a different one. She didn't know if the shift had changed in the night. She realized she didn't care. She made coffee. She stood at the counter and drank it. She didn't taste it. The broken purple crayon was back in the bin on the floor from last week. Lily had picked up the new ones and put them back on her own, the way she'd been trying to do lately to be a big girl. There was a strawberry magnet still on the fridge holding a permission slip that Maya had forgotten to sign. A grocery list on the counter that started with milk and ended with the cereal with the bear. An ordinary morning, an ordinary kitchen. In the middle of it, her daughter had almost died. She set the coffee down on the counter and pressed both hands flat on either side of it and bent her head, and for the first time, in the full daylight, she allowed herself to say it out loud. My daughter almost died. Her voice cracked on the word died, and she had to stop and get her breath back. My daughter almost died because of me. That was the one that did it. That was the one she'd been carrying around in her ribcage all night without letting it come out. She straightened up. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her t-shirt. She looked at the clock. 7:22. At 7:34, Lily padded out of the bedroom in her socks and her pink pajamas and climbed up onto a kitchen chair without saying anything. Maya watched her do it. Lily did not ask for cereal. Lily did not turn on the little TV in the corner. Lily just sat at the table with her hands in her lap and looked at them. Maya sat down across from her. Hey. Hi. How'd you sleep? Okay. You want to go to school today? A long pause. Lily shook her head. Slow, small. Okay. You don't have to. Are you going to work? No. You never stay home on a Thursday. I am today. It's a special Thursday. Lily nodded, like that made sense, which it didn't. She picked at a loose thread on the cuff of her pajamas. Mommy. Yeah, baby. Yesterday at the restaurant. Yeah. Why did that happen? And there it was. The question Maya had been waiting for, and she had not, in all her planning, figured out a single acceptable lie for it. I don't know yet, Lil. Was somebody trying to shoot us? Not us, baby. I don't think it was us. Who then? I don't know. Maybe somebody who was there before we got there. Maybe it had nothing to do with us. Sometimes bad things just happen near people and the people had nothing to do with it. Like when you're just walking and somebody's dog bites you. Kind of, yeah. Lily considered this. Then she said, in the same flat, small voice, I don't want to go back there. We don't ever have to go back there. But I like the dinosaur. We'll find another dinosaur. Her daughter's chin wobbled, just once, and Maya was around the table and on her knees, and had Lily's face in her hands before the first tear hit. Hey, listen to me. Listen. You're safe. You are safe. I've got you, okay? Nobody is going to hurt you. I promise. I promise, Lil. I would die before I let anybody hurt you. Do you understand me? Don't die. I'm not going to. I'm saying you are safe. That's what I'm saying. Lily nodded under her hands. Her small face was wet. She leaned forward and put her forehead against Maya's forehead, and they stayed like that for a while. And Maya rocked a little, the way she had in the diner parking lot, a small, useless rocking that she couldn't stop. After a while, Lily said into Maya's face, Mommy, your breath smells like coffee. I'm sorry. It's okay. I like coffee smell. Maya laughed, and it came out wet, and she kissed her daughter's forehead and stood up and made her cereal with the bear on the box and watched her eat it. And she thought the thing she had refused to think all night, and she let herself think it this time. She was not going to walk away. She had spent the entire night telling herself she would. She had spent the entire night rehearsing the conversation in which she would tell Lucien that it was over, that she was leaving, that he would never see her or her daughter again. She had pictured the apartment they would move to. She had pictured the new school she would enroll Lily in. She had pictured the hospital in another city where she would work nights again and make it work again, the way she had been making it work before any of this happened. And she had known, the entire time she was picturing it, that it wasn't true. It wasn't a moral failure. That was what she needed to understand, sitting there watching her daughter eat cereal. It wasn't that she'd been seduced. It wasn't that she'd been bought. It was that the world she had been living in before Lucien Voss, the one where a mother could do everything right and still lose her daughter to a slow grind of bills and bad luck, was the world where her daughter had almost died yesterday. And the world Lucien Voss lived in, the one that had almost killed Lily at a diner counter, was also the world where a dark sedan sat outside her building all night with a man in it who would put himself between her daughter and a bullet without being asked twice. Both worlds had almost killed Lily yesterday. Only one of them had sent someone to sit outside in the dark. She was not going to walk away. She was going to make him do it her way. Bob. She called him at 9:02. He picked up on the first ring like he had been holding the phone. Maya? Don't come here. Meet me somewhere. Anywhere. There's a little park on Franklin and 6th. There's a bench by the fountain. I know it. 11. I'll be there at 10:45. Alone. Alone. Lucien. Yeah, I mean it. I see one other person. I see a car I don't like. I see anyone near me who looks like they know you. I walk out and you never hear from me again. I don't care what happens after that. You understand me. I understand. And bring... She stopped. She had been about to say yourself and realized that was what she had already said. I'll see you at 11. She hung up. She stood in the kitchen with the phone in her hand for a minute. Then she went and took a shower, and she let the water hit the stitches on her arm until they stung, and she got dressed like a woman getting ready for a job interview, because in a way she was. She dropped Lily at Mrs. Alvarado's with a kiss on the forehead and a promise that she would be back in 2 hours. Mrs. Alvarado did not ask any questions. Mrs. Alvarado had seen the news the night before, and Mrs. Alvarado had also seen the sedan outside. And Mrs. Alvarado was the kind of woman who knew what she knew and would never say it. Go, she said. I'll make her pancakes. Thank you, Senora. Go. The park at 10:51 was empty except for 2 old men playing chess at a stone table and a woman walking a small brown dog in circles around a tree. The fountain was off for the winter. The bench she had chosen was under a tree that had lost all its leaves, which meant it was visible from 3 directions, which was why she had chosen it. He was already there, not sitting, standing next to the bench, in the dark coat, hands in his pockets, breath making small clouds. He had not shaved. That was the first thing she noticed. He had not shaved, and the skin under his eyes was a color she had never seen on him before. He had not slept either. She walked up to him. She stopped maybe 4 feet away. She did not sit. Did you find them? Yes. All of them. All of them who are going to matter. There's one more we're still looking for. He's going to be found today. And what did you do? He looked at her. He didn't answer. I want you to say it. Maya, you don't want me to. I do. I'm not a child. I'm not a civilian anymore. I haven't been a civilian for 3 months. I want you to say it. He held her eyes. The chess players, far off, laughed at something one of them had said. They are not going to hurt anyone again. That's a coward's way to say it. Yes. Say it the other way. I won't, Maya. Not to you. Not today. I can say a lot of things to you, but I'm not going to stand in this park and tell a woman who is still shaking about what I did to the men who scared her daughter. I won't do it. You can hate me for that too if you want to. She looked at him for a long moment. She understood suddenly that he was trying to preserve something, not for himself, for her. The last thin layer between her and the thing she had stepped into. He was trying not to be the one to tear it off. It was the first real kindness she had ever seen in him, and she did not know what to do with it. She sat down on the bench. After a second, he sat down too, with a careful 1.5 feet between them. Who were they? She said. A crew from out of state. They were trying to move into my corner of the business. A few of my people had been approached. One took money. That's the one I should have caught sooner. They came for me because of the one who took the money. They came for you to get at me, because they'd been told you were the closest thing to a crack I have. He said it flatly, no theater in it. She let it sit. Am I? Yes. She let that sit too. Lucienne. Yeah. I'm not walking away. He looked at her. For the first time that morning, his face did something, a small movement of his mouth that wasn't quite anything, a thing that in another man would have been the start of a breath he didn't let out. Okay, he said. Quiet. I'm not saying that because I want to. I'm saying it because I've thought about it all night, and I can't. Not with her. Not now. If I walk away now, they know where I live. They know what school she goes to. They know what kind of car I drive, and they know what time I leave for my shift. You can't put the lid back on what's happened. Whatever world they came from, they've seen me now. Me walking away doesn't take me out of it. It just takes away this one person who's been shooting back on my behalf. So I'm not walking. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yes. I need you to understand this isn't me choosing you. I understand. I mean it. Some part of me wants to. Some part of me has wanted to for a while, and I'm not going to insult both of us by pretending I haven't. But that's not what this is. This is me making a decision for my kid. You are what's on the other side of the door I'm not willing to go back through. You are a condition of the room I'm in now. Do you understand? He was quiet for a long time. Yes, he said. Good. And if I told you I could make you disappear? New name, new city, new everything. Money for 15 years. Her in a school where nobody would know where she came from. I could do that for you. I want to tell you I could. I would do that for you today if you asked me. Could you really? I could try. And would anyone ever come for us anyway? He didn't answer. That's what I thought, she said. That's exactly what I thought. So listen to me. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to do some things for me, and I am going to do some things for you. And we are going to make this thing between us into something that's survivable for my daughter, because I am not going to let her grow up with a shadow on her school. Are you listening to me? I'm listening. She doesn't meet you for a long time. Okay. I mean a long time, Lucien. Not because I'm ashamed, because I need to know. I need to watch you in my life before I let you into hers. I need to see what a Tuesday looks like with you in it. I need to see what happens the first time I tell you no about something and you have to sit with it. I need to see how you handle it when I'm tired and I'm mean and I don't want to be touched. Before any of that is clear to me, she does not know your name. Yes, when she does meet you, she meets you as a friend of mine, not as anything else, not for a long time, however long that takes. You do not rush that. You do not bring her presents that are too expensive. You do not try to win her. You let her come to you, because that is how children choose, and you, of all people, do not get to buy a child's love. Do you understand me? Yes. The work we've been doing, that stops. He looked at her. It stops? Yes. I am not patching up the men who get hurt in the work you do. I'm out of that end of it. If I'm going to be around you, I am not also going to be the woman who sews up your soldiers in a warehouse. I can't be both. I can't hold those two things in the same life. It will break me, and it will break whatever we're trying to build, and it will break Lily, because she has a mother who comes home at 3 in the morning smelling like a stranger's blood. And I can see already what that is doing to her. Even if she doesn't know, I see it. It stops. All right? Just like that. Just like that, Maya. And you hire somebody real. Somebody with a license, somebody with a clinic, somebody who does it for money and nothing else. I'll help you find one if you need. I know too. All right. And you pay me. He looked at her. Not for the past, she said. For the past, I keep what you already gave me, and I sleep at night about it as best I can. For going forward. I don't work for free, and I don't want to be kept. I am a nurse. I will always be a nurse. I need to do my job, but I can't keep working doubles. Not with all this. I need to cut back, and I need you to make up the difference, and I need you to call it what it is, which is money. Not a gift. Not an allowance. A payment from the man who is in my life to the woman who is letting him be in it. That is the arrangement. Do you understand? Yes. You don't get to use any of this against me later. Not ever. Not in a fight. Not in a bad moment. You do not say to me, I pay for your apartment. You do not say to me, I pay for her school. If I ever hear a single word out of your mouth that sounds like that, I am gone. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care if the whole thing burns. I will be gone, and I will take her with me, and you will never find us. I know you could. I'm telling you that you won't, because you are going to know better than to try. He breathed out, a small breath she might not have caught if she hadn't been looking. He rubbed the side of his jaw with one thumb. Maya. Yeah. Can I say something? You can. I don't deserve what you're giving me. I know that. I'm not giving it to you. I'm giving it to her. You're the part I'm keeping for myself. He was quiet. He was looking down at his own hands where they were resting on his thighs, and she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, and she understood without pleasure that she had just done something to him that very few people in his life had ever done. One more thing, she said. The biggest one. Okay. The man in the car. Yes. I'm not asking him to leave. A long pause. Okay? I want you to understand what that means. I am letting your people watch my daughter. That is not a small thing. That is the thing. If I ever have a reason to doubt any one of them, if I ever feel watched in a way I don't like, if one of them ever speaks to her without my permission, if one of them ever so much as smiles at her on the stairs in a way I don't like, he is gone. And I mean gone out of my building. Not, you know what I mean. I mean gone from this job. I'm not running an execution squad from my kitchen. I understand. The ones who watch us, I want to know their names, all of them. I want to shake their hands. I want them to know my face and know I know theirs. I am not going to be protected by strangers. If they're going to keep my daughter alive, they're going to have dinner with me once, one of them at a time. You set it up, somewhere boring, a diner. Not the diner, another diner. Okay? Any one of them doesn't want to sit across a table from the mother of the kid they're watching, they don't get the job. I want men who can look me in the eye. Yeah, he said, and there was something almost amused in it, something warm. Yeah, Maya. What? Nothing. Keep going. I'm almost done. Okay. The last thing. She looked at him. She made herself look at him. I'm going to be scared for a long time, she said. I'm going to be scared for months. I'm going to be scared in my sleep, and I'm going to be scared when someone drops a pan in a restaurant, and I'm going to be scared every time my daughter is out of the room longer than I think she should be. I'm going to look at you and not want you near me some days because you're going to remind me of the sound the windows made. And you do not get to fix that by being good at things, Lucien. You do not get to buy your way out of that by being attentive. You are going to have to sit with that. You are going to have to let me be angry at you for no reason sometimes in the middle of the night about a thing that isn't your fault, and you're going to have to take it. Are you the kind of man who can do that? He didn't answer right away. He was a man, she had realized by now, who took honest questions seriously. He did not answer them with yes because yes was what they wanted to hear. He answered them with the truth, or he didn't answer them at all. I don't know, he said. She blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. I've never had a chance to be that kind of man, he said. I don't know if I'm one. I think I could be. I think I want to be. But I've spent 20 years being the other kind. I would be lying to you if I told you I could just put that down. What I can tell you is I'm going to try every day, and I'm going to fail some days. And when I fail, I'm going to tell you I failed instead of hiding it from you. That is the best I have to offer you, Maya. That is the most honest I can be. She looked at her hands. Okay, she said. Okay, that's fair. Is it enough? It has to be. The woman with the small brown dog walked past them for the third time. The dog stopped to look at Maya. Maya held her hand out, and the dog sniffed it, and Maya scratched its chin, and the woman with the dog said, "She likes you." And Maya said, "I'm glad somebody does." And the woman laughed uneasily and moved on. Lucian watched the dog go. Maya. Yeah. Are you okay? No. Yeah, okay. But I'm going to be. I believe you. She looked at him. You said I was the closest thing to a crack you have. Yes. You have to close that crack, Lucian. I'm telling you. You have to make it so this never happens again. Not by hiring more men, not by buying bigger cars, by whatever you did last night, but more of it, and quieter. Nobody ever comes near my daughter because of who I'm sleeping with. Nobody ever comes near her because of a thing you do. If that's not a promise you can make to me in this park today, on this bench, right now, then I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk to my car and I'm never going to see you again, and I don't care what happens to me after that. He didn't speak for a long time. When he did, it was the quietest she had ever heard him. I promise you, he said, on whatever you want me to put my hand on, I promise you, nobody is going to come near her again, not because of me, not because of you. I will unmake whole men to make that true. Okay. I mean it. I know you do. Okay then. She sat. He sat. The cold was starting to get into her bones. She could see her own breath and his breath mixing in the space between them in the air. After a while, without looking at him, she said, "The detective. What about her? She knows, or she suspects. I could see it. I'll handle it." "What does that mean?" "I'll handle it." "You will not touch her, Lucien. You will not touch her." "Maya, I'm not an amateur. She's a detective. I'm not going to touch a detective. I'm going to make sure she never has a reason to look at you twice. That's all. There are ways. Okay? I mean it. Her career is not something I'm going to mess with. She didn't do anything. Okay. Maya, what? Thank you. For what? For not making me promise something I couldn't do about her. She looked at him and didn't say anything. She didn't know what her face was doing. She hoped it was doing something unreadable. They walked back to her car together. He stopped maybe 10 feet from it. He didn't come closer. "The man in the sedan," she said. "What's his name?" "Andre." "Andre? He's been with me 8 years. He has 3 daughters." "Good. I'll have him come up tomorrow morning, 7:30. You make him coffee. He'll like that. Okay? Maya. Yeah. Can I call you tonight?" She looked at him. He was standing there in that coat with his unshaved jaw and the purple under his eyes and his hands in his pockets, and he was, of all things she could have imagined him being, asking. "Yes," she said. "Okay." "Late, after she's down." "Okay." "Lucienne." "Yeah." "Don't tell me you love me on the phone, not tonight, not for a while. I need to get there on my own. Don't push it." He looked at her for a long beat. "Okay," he said. She got in the car. He did not come to the window. He stood by the park fence with his hands in his pockets and watched her pull out, and she watched him in the rearview mirror for as long as she could, until she turned the corner and he was gone. She picked up Lily at Mrs. Alvarado's. Lily had flour on her nose and pancake syrup in her hair and was holding a half-eaten banana. She ran at Maya's legs and buried her face in her thigh and held on. Maya stood in Mrs. Alvarado's doorway and put her hand on her daughter's head and breathed very slowly, in and out, and looked at Mrs. Alvarado over Lily's head. "Thank you," she mouthed. "Go home," Mrs. Alvarado mouthed back. At home, she let Lily watch one of her shows. She made grilled cheese. She cut the crusts off because Lily had decided the week before that she was anti-crust. She ate her own without cutting the crusts off, because she felt like it. That night, after Lily was down, Maya sat on her couch with the lights off and her phone on the arm of the sofa. At 11:04, the phone buzzed. She picked it up. Hey. How is she? She ate half a grilled cheese and then fell asleep on the bath mat before I could put her in her pajamas. I had to carry her to bed. She's all right. She will be. Okay. Did it? Yeah, it's done. Okay. All right. I can hear you're tired, Lucienne. I am, a little. Go to sleep. Not yet. Why? Because I want to hear you breathing on the other end of this for a minute. She didn't answer. She just didn't hang up. She leaned her head back against the couch cushion and closed her eyes and let her breathing do what it was going to do. And somewhere on the other end of the line, he did the same, and the line stayed open for maybe 10 minutes, neither of them saying anything, just the soft hiss of a connection. Two people sitting alone in two different rooms listening to each other, not be alone. She fell asleep on the couch with the phone still to her ear. He stayed on the line until his battery died at 1:17 in the morning, and then he sat in the dark in his own apartment for another hour, looking at the dead phone in his hand. In the morning, at 7:32, there was a knock on her door. She opened it with her hair still wet from the shower. A broad, square-shouldered man was standing in the hallway with a paper cup of coffee from the place on the corner in one hand and a small wrapped thing in the other hand. He was maybe 50. He had salt and pepper hair and a small scar above his left eyebrow, and the kindest eyes she had seen on a grown man in a long time. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm Andre. I was told you might want to meet me." "Andre?" "Yes, ma'am." "Come in." He came in. He took his shoes off at the door, unprompted, which made her feel something she couldn't name. He handed her the coffee. The wrapped thing turned out to be a small plastic container of chocolate chip cookies, which he had very seriously made that morning with his middle daughter, whose name, he explained in the same serious voice, was Esme, and who was 11, and who had wanted to come with him but had been informed, in no uncertain terms, that this was a work meeting. "I saved 3 for her," he said. "She picked these 3 out for your kid." Maya looked at him. She looked at the plastic container. She looked at the man standing in her living room in his socks, holding his coat over his arm. She started to cry, not because she was sad. She didn't even know why. It just came up and came out of her all at once, and she put her face in her hands and sobbed, and Andre did not say a single thing. He did not touch her. He just set his coat on the back of a chair and stood there, patient as a barn, until she could breathe again. "Sorry," she said. "I'm sorry. Ma'am, you don't apologize to me. Not for that. Not ever." "Okay. You want to sit down?" "Yeah, You want me to make you eggs?" "You don't have to make me eggs." "I'd like to, if it's all right." "Okay." She sat at her kitchen table. Andre opened her fridge and looked at what was in it. Andre found her pan. Andre turned on her stove. A minute later, her bedroom door creaked open and Lily appeared in the hall in her pink pajamas, hair in a mess, rubbing her eyes. She stopped when she saw the man in her kitchen. She did not run. She did not cry. She looked at Maya. "Who's that?" Maya took a breath. "Baby," she said, "this is my friend Andre. He is going to be around for a while. He makes really good eggs, and his daughter Esme made you cookies." Lily looked at Andre. Andre did not turn around. He was still facing the stove, cracking an egg with one hand. He did not push. He did not wave. He just said, to the wall, "Morning, Lily. Pleasure to meet you." Lily thought about this for a long second. Then she walked across the kitchen, very seriously, and sat down at the table next to her mother, and she said, "Do you put cheese in the eggs? If you want cheese in the eggs, I want cheese in the eggs. Cheese it is." And Maya sat there at her kitchen table on a Friday morning in December with her daughter in her pink pajamas beside her and a man she had known for 11 minutes cooking breakfast at her stove, and she understood that she had moved irrevocably into a new life. It was not going to be a clean one. It was not going to be a simple one. There were going to be nights when she was going to hate him. There were going to be nights when she was going to hate herself. There was going to be a first meeting between Lily and Lucien that she was already dreading, months from now, in a park maybe, at a distance, carefully constructed. There was going to be a first time Lily called him something other than the man. But this morning, right now, her daughter was asking if the eggs had cheese, and a man who had 3 daughters of his own was saying, "Cheese it is." And Maya was going to drink her coffee, and she was going to eat her eggs, and she was going to let herself be fed for the first time in longer than she could remember. She reached across the table and put her hand on top of Lily's. Lily looked up at her, still sleepy. "What, Mommy?" "Nothing, baby." "Then why did you grab my hand?" "Just to grab it." "Oh." Lily considered this. "Okay." And she squeezed back. Outside, the city went on being the city. Somewhere across town, a tall man was sleeping for the first time in 48 hours, a dead phone on the pillow next to him. Somewhere closer, Mrs. Alvarado was pretending not to watch Maya's door from the peephole across the hall. And somewhere inside herself, deep under the exhaustion and the fear and the still uncried parts of the day before, Maya Carter felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Not happiness. It wasn't that yet. It was smaller than that. It was the absence of a kind of fear she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten its weight. She squeezed her daughter's hand back. The eggs were ready. The eggs became a Friday thing, and then the Friday thing became the shape of a life. It did not happen fast. Nothing in the next 4 years happened fast, which was the first thing Maya understood later, when she would try to explain it to herself. People who have never lived inside a slow change imagine that lives turn on single moments. The night in the garage, the diner, the bench in the park. They do. But the actual work of becoming a different person is done in 1,000 unremarkable mornings, standing at a stove deciding one more time not to run. Andre made eggs for Lily every Friday for the first 6 months. He never pushed. He never asked a question Lily didn't offer him first. He had been told, Maya understood, exactly what he was allowed to do, and he held to it like a vow. By February, Lily had started calling him Dre, which he accepted with a small, serious nod. And by March, she had told him about Priya's hamster, and by April, she had confided in a whisper at the kitchen table that she had a loose tooth again and was going to be rich on Saturday. "Is that right?" Andre said. "Uh-huh." "How rich?" $5. "That's more than I got." "Yours was only $1? 50 cents, sweetheart. My tooth fairy was cheap." Lily had looked at him with enormous sympathy and eaten the rest of her eggs in silence. And later, in the car, she had told Maya very seriously that when she was a grown-up, she was going to find Andre's tooth fairy and ask her what her problem was. Maya had laughed so hard she'd had to pull over. That was the first time she'd understood really that her daughter was going to be okay. Not unbothered, not unscathed. The diner had left something in Lily that was never going to fully leave. She flinched at loud pops of any kind for the rest of her life, and she did not like restaurants with big front windows, and twice a year, for about a week each time, she had bad dreams she wouldn't describe. But she was going to be a person. A funny, stubborn, big-hearted person, with strong opinions about tooth fairies and loose change. And Maya had understood, sitting on the side of a road in March with her forehead against the steering wheel and her 7-year-old daughter laughing in the back seat, that this right here, was the thing she had been trying to buy the entire time. Not safety. You can't buy safety. Nobody can. What you can buy, if you're lucky and willing to pay in coins you didn't know you had, is the chance to be the kind of tired mother whose kid is still telling jokes in the back of the car. That was enough. That had to be enough. Lucien did not come to the apartment for a long time. That was part of the arrangement. He kept his side of it the way he kept everything else, which was with a kind of fanatic exactness that sometimes made Maya want to throw a shoe at him for being so good at it. They saw each other twice a week at first. Lunches, at places with bright lights and a lot of exits. He would already be seated when she arrived, always in a booth in the back, always with his eyes on the door. They would talk about nothing, then about something, then about nothing again. She did not touch him. He did not reach for her. He watched her eat soup, and she watched him drink black coffee. And for 3 months, that was the whole of what they had. It should have been strange. In a way, it was. In a deeper way, it was the least strange thing she had ever done with a man. Because the deal she had made with him in the park, the one about being angry at him for no reason, the one about being tired, the one about letting her not want him near her some days, held. He took it. He took all of it. There was a Tuesday in February when she walked into the lunch place with the back of her neck already on fire and sat down across from him and said, "I don't want to talk to anybody today." And he had said, "Okay." And he had eaten his sandwich and she had eaten her soup in complete silence. And at the end, he had paid the check and walked her to her car and said, "Drive safe, Maya." And that was the entire visit, and it had been exactly what she needed. In the car on the way home, she had cried a little, not sadly, and she had thought, this is a man. It wasn't the romance. The romance was easy. Any fool could make the eyes at a woman over a cup of coffee. It was the silence. It was the way he had not tried to fix the silence, or fill it, or make her explain it. Nobody had ever let her have a silence before. Not her mother, not Danny, not her father, when she'd been small, and God knew not the world she'd been working in for 10 years. And here was a man who had killed people. Not in a story, not in a movie, in an actual alley, an actual number of them. And the thing he was choosing to give her, across a booth in a lunch place, was the uninterrupted quiet of a Tuesday afternoon. She understood driving home that she was going to marry him eventually. It did not feel like a good thought. It didn't feel like a bad one either. It felt like a fact. The way you understand looking at an X-ray that the bone is broken. You don't argue with it. You start figuring out what comes next. Lily met him in May, in a park. Maya had spent weeks picking the park. It had to be big enough not to feel like a setup, small enough that she could see every entrance. There had to be grass. There had to be other kids. There had to be a playground that Lily liked already, so that her daughter arrived in a good mood. Because Maya had learned a long time ago that nothing on earth survived a 7-year-old in a bad mood. Lucian was already sitting on a bench when they got there. Not the bench near the playground. 2 benches down, with a paper cup of coffee and a book he was actually reading, because Maya had told him to bring a book and to actually read it, because children can tell when adults are faking. She had sent him the book on purpose, a paperback biography of a baseball player he had never heard of. "Read it," she had said. "At least the first 40 pages. She might ask, "I don't know anything about baseball." Good. That'll make it interesting. He had read it. He had read the whole thing, actually, which she had not found out until later. 400 pages about a shortstop. That was one of the small facts she kept over the years, to pull out in her head on bad days. He read 400 pages about a shortstop because I told him my daughter might ask. Lily ran off to the climbing structure. Maya sat on a bench one over from Lucian's. They did not look at each other. They talked across the 10 feet between them, low, not quite casual. "Hi." "Hachabi, how are you?" Yeah." "You nervous?" "Maya, tell me the truth." "I haven't been this nervous since I was 17. "That's good. That means you're taking it seriously." "I'm taking it seriously." Lily climbed. Lily shrieked at another child about something involving the monkey bars. Lily came back after maybe 15 minutes with dirt on her knees and a question about a kite she had seen, and Maya introduced her to Lucian, and Lucian did what Maya had told him to do, which was nothing in particular. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Lily said. "Your mom's friend." "Yeah, I heard. I'm Lucienne." "That's a weird name. I know. How do you know my mom?" "From the hospital." "Are you a doctor?" "No." "Were you sick?" "A friend of mine was." "Is your friend okay now?" "Yeah, he's okay now." "That's good." Lily looked at him for a second, then went back to asking Maya about the kite, and Maya answered, and after another minute Lily ran off again, and Maya looked over at Lucian, and Lucian was looking after Lily with an expression on his face that Maya had never seen on it. "You all right?" she said. "Yeah." "She's tough." "Yeah." "She's going to ask you another question in a few minutes. She always circles back." "Okay." "Breathe, Lucian." He breathed. Lily circled back 20 minutes later and asked him what his favorite ice cream was. He said mint chocolate chip. Lily, who considered mint chocolate chip a personal affront, told him he was wrong and walked away. Maya almost fell off the bench laughing. He came back every month after that. Never to the apartment, always in public places, always with a book. Lily, who was nobody's fool, figured out very quickly that this was a man her mother was dating and asked Maya about it one night in the bath with the matter-of-fact directness of a child who had no patience for adult euphemism. "Is Lucian your boyfriend?" "I don't know what we're calling him yet." "Is he going to be your boyfriend?" "Maybe." "Do you like him?" "I do." "Does he like you?" "I think so." "Does he like me?" "I think he's trying to figure out how to like you right," which is the right thing for a grown-up to try to figure out. "What does that mean?" "It means he knows he doesn't get to be a dad to you, because you have a dad, and he's trying to figure out what he's allowed to be instead." Lily splashed her foot in the water. "He's not going to be my dad." "I know, baby. Daddy's my dad. I know. Even if he's not around." "Even if he's not around, yes." Lily thought about this for a while. Then she said, "He can be my Lucian." Maya, who had been rinsing shampoo out of her daughter's hair, stopped with her hand on the back of Lily's head. "You're Lucian," she said. "Yeah, like how Priya has an uncle. Like that, but not an uncle. Just my Lucian." "Okay, baby." "Okay?" "Yeah, I think that sounds right." Lily went back to her bath toys, and Maya sat on the edge of the tub, with her chest burning and her eyes full. And she thought, this is how it's going to go then. Okay, she told him the next time she saw him, in a coffee shop on Lexington. He was stirring his coffee with a wooden stick, and he had not spoken for maybe 2 minutes, listening to her, the way he did when she was telling him something that mattered to her. And when she got to the part about my Lucian, he stopped stirring. He set the stick down on the saucer. He looked at his coffee for a long time. That's a lot of responsibility, he said eventually. "I know. That's a lot more than I thought a child would ever—" "I know, Lucian." He looked up. His eyes were wet. It was the first time she had ever seen his eyes be wet. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay, I'll be her Lucienne." "Okay. Don't tell anyone I cried in a coffee shop on Lexington." "I'm not telling a soul." "Maya." "Yeah. Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm thanking you." "Don't. I'm thanking you anyway." She reached across the table and put her hand on his for the first time in public, and he turned his hand over and held hers, and the waitress came by and offered them a refill on his coffee and a refill on her tea, and they both nodded without letting go. And the waitress smiled the way waitresses smile at grown people in love, which is a very specific smile, 1/10 knowing and 9/10 glad. They got married 18 months after that, in a small ceremony that Maya planned down to the minute, not because she wanted it to be grand, because she did not want any surprises, no bigger than 20 people, outdoors, morning, not evening, a judge she had vetted herself. Lily, as the only person walking her mother in a dress she had chosen at a store on Bleecker with Maya's mother, who had come down from Rochester for 3 days and cried every time she looked at her granddaughter in the new shoes. Andre came. So did Teo. So did Rafi, who was 30 by then and still making the same dumb jokes, and had brought a card with a pop-up heart in it that he had clearly bought at a drugstore on the way. Mrs. Alvarado came and wore a hat that blocked the view of the 2 people behind her, and they moved, because this was Mrs. Alvarado. Maya's mother walked up to Lucien at one point during the reception. Maya saw it from across the little garden where they had set up the tables. Her mother had a glass of champagne in one hand and a plate of melon in the other, and she was wearing the yellow suit she had owned for 30 years, and she walked up to Maya's new husband and looked him in the eye. Maya could not hear what her mother said. She did not need to. She watched her mother say it. She watched Lucien listen. She watched Lucien nod, very seriously, and then say something back, and her mother patted his arm, and then her mother moved on to the melon at the next table. Later, in the car, Maya asked him what her mother had said. "She told me if I ever made either one of you cry on purpose, she would put a kitchen knife under my ribs." "She what?" "She used exactly those words." "And what did you say?" "I said, 'Yes, ma'am, I understand, and if I ever do, I'll buy you the knife. Lucien. What? It was the right answer. Yeah, Maya said, looking out the window at a city she had stopped being afraid of block by block. Yeah, it was. Sophia was born on a Tuesday in the fall, 3 years into the marriage. Maya had not wanted a second child for the longest time. She had not been sure she could hold the kind of attention a baby takes, but somewhere, without either of them quite deciding it, the decision had been made anyway, and when the test had come back and she had sat on the edge of the tub with the stick in her hand, she had not felt the fear she'd been braced for. She had felt, instead, a small, steady warmth somewhere under her sternum, and she had thought plainly, okay, we can do this. Lucien, when she told him, had sat down on the floor, just like that, right where he was standing, in the hallway. He had sat down on the floor and leaned his back against the wall and stared at his hands for maybe 2 full minutes, and when he'd looked up, his face had done something she had never seen it do before. It had opened, and he had said, in a voice she barely recognized, Are you sure? I'm sure. Maya. Yeah. I don't know how to do this. Nobody does. You learn. I'm going to be bad at it. You'll be fine. I'm serious. I know, so am I. You'll be fine. You'll be late sometimes. You'll be short-tempered sometimes. You'll miss things. You'll do things right the other 90% of the time, which is all anyone gets, Lucien. You'll be fine. He had held his hands out from his body, palms up, like he was holding something invisible. Maya. Yeah. I'm not the kind of man who... You keep saying that. You haven't been that man for years. You're going to have to stop telling yourself that story eventually. It's a bad story, and it's not true anymore. He had looked up at her. He had nodded once, like she had told him something he was going to take the rest of his life to finish understanding, which, as it turned out, was exactly what he did. He was a good father. Maya had not been certain. She had hoped. She had, in her quieter moments, been scared. But he was a good father. With Lily, he was careful in the way she had asked him to be, always just a little to the side of the center of Lily's life, a presence, not an authority. And with Sophia, who was his in a way Lily never would be, who was his by blood and by right, and by the sleepless nights of her first 2 months, he was something Maya had not expected. He was gentle, not performatively gentle, not the way men sometimes become gentle with their daughters as a kind of costume, actually gentle. He learned how to warm a bottle. He learned the specific spot on Sophia's back that she liked to be patted to go to sleep, and he learned it faster than Maya did, because he had the patience of a man who had been waiting 39 years for someone to ask him to pat their back. He walked the apartment for hours in the middle of the night with his baby daughter on his shoulder, and he did not complain, and the morning after the very worst night, the one where Sophia had screamed for 4 hours straight with colic and neither of them had slept, Maya had come out of the bedroom at dawn to find them both asleep on the couch, Sophia on her father's chest, both of their mouths open, both of their hair sticking up at the same angle, and she had stood in the doorway with one hand over her mouth and cried, because she had not known, until that moment, the particular way a woman can be relieved. The business over those years got quieter. She didn't ask what that meant, in the specifics. She had told him, that first morning in the park, that what happened after was not going to be her concern, and she had held to it, because keeping your own word is what makes you a person you can live with. But she watched. She watched the number of phone calls that pulled him out of the house drop year over year. She watched the number of men on the street below their building go from 4 to 2 to 1. She watched him develop slowly, other things to do with his days, a board he sat on for a youth center in a neighborhood he'd grown up in, a small pile of real estate holdings that he ran with a kind of boring competence that sometimes bored even him. He never became a legitimate businessman in any clean way. She never pretended to herself that he had. But the shape of what he did narrowed, year by year, from a thing that had a body count to a thing that had a footprint, and that was what he had promised her, in the park, 4 years before. And he was not a man who forgot what he had promised. Once, in Sophia's second year, Maya had walked into his study without knocking, and he had been on the phone, and he had not heard her come in. He had been saying, in that very quiet voice he used when he was angry, No, I don't care what he did to your cousin. I don't deal with that anymore. You want it dealt with? You go to someone else. That's not me. That hasn't been me in 3 years. He had hung up. He had seen her in the doorway. He had not looked ashamed. He had just looked tired and a little sad. Maya, I was just bringing you coffee. It's okay. Who was that? A cousin of a man I used to work with. He wanted something. And you said no. I said no. You've been saying no a lot. Yes. Is that going to cost you? He had thought about it. It already has. A lot? Not the way you mean. Not in ways that come to the door. In other ways. There's a version of me that didn't say no, and that version has more of what I used to have. I'm not him anymore. I don't miss him, but he existed, and I notice when I notice him not existing. That's all. She had set the coffee down on his desk. Lucien. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For saying no. Yeah. I mean it. I know. She had sat on the edge of his desk. He had put his head against her hip, the way he sometimes did when he wanted her to know something he couldn't say. She had put her hand in his hair. They had sat like that for a long time, and outside the window a pigeon had done something loud on a sill, and neither of them had laughed, and neither of them had moved, and that was a whole conversation. The thing about the story she had ended up in, she thought sometimes, late at night, when the baby was finally down, when Lily was asleep with a book on her chest, when her husband was across the apartment reading a history of the Roman Navy for reasons he would not explain, the thing about the story she had ended up in was that it was not a love story the way she had been told love stories worked. She had been told by a whole culture that told girls the same lie on the same schedule, that love was something you fell into, that it happened to you, that the right man found you and lit you up and you were changed. The truth, she had come to believe, was different. The truth was that love was something you built, in conditions that were never ideal, out of materials that were often contaminated, with a person who was often difficult, on top of a foundation of choices you had made, each one smaller than you thought it was when you made it. The truth was that you didn't fall into it. You walked into it every day on purpose, knowing what it cost. Some days you walked in faster than others. Some days you had to drag yourself. Some days, honestly, you didn't walk in at all, and the relationship survived because the other person walked in on your behalf that day, and you walked in on theirs the day before. And that was what partnership was, actually, when you took all the garnish off it. She thought about the woman she had been at 11:46 on that Tuesday night, under the flickering light in the parking garage, writing bulb out on a clipboard nobody would read. That woman had been 29 years old, and she had thought her life was already written. She had thought the shape of the next 40 years was already decided. Doubles and doubles and doubles. A daughter she would lose contact with from working too much. A body that would wear out at 52 the way her own mother's had. And somewhere at the end, a small apartment she could not afford. That woman had been wrong. That woman had not been wrong because she had been saved by a man in a black coat. That woman had been wrong because she had not yet understood that she was capable of kneeling down in blood in a garage and still being a person the next morning. She had not yet understood that her own unflinching was a resource. She had not yet learned that it was possible, for a person like her, to stand up to a man like Lucien Voss on a bench in a park and tell him clearly, in the full light of day, what the terms would be, and that he would listen, because she had the one thing he had not ever been able to buy in 20 years of running rooms, which was honesty without fear. She had not been saved, she had saved herself. She had used him to do it, and he had used her back in different ways, and they had told each other the truth about the using, which was why they had survived. She did not, years later, look back on the woman under the flickering light with pity. She looked back on her with something more complicated than that, a kind of wary affection, an acknowledgement. You did not know it yet, she wanted to say to that woman, but you were already deciding. You had already started. The lesson, if there was one, and she was suspicious by now of stories that had neat lessons, was something like this. You do not always get to choose the door that opens. You do not always get to choose who is standing on the other side of it. What you get to choose, mostly, is whether you are going to walk through it as yourself or as a smaller version of yourself. That was the decision, in the end. Not the garage, not the diner, not the bench. The decision was at the kitchen table on the morning after the worst day, when she had told herself she was not going to walk away. And then she had sat down, and then she had written a list of conditions, and then she had kept every one of them, and made him keep every one of them. And that was how a woman built a life. It was not a clean life. Lily still had her bad weeks twice a year. Sophia would grow up with a father she loved and questions she would eventually ask that Maya would have to figure out how to answer. There were still, somewhere out there in the city, men who had once wished Lucien Voss harm and might wish it again. And Andre still stood in the lobby of their building some nights, and some nights Maya still slept badly. And there would be no year of her life, probably, when she did not wake up at some point in the dark and listen for a sound on the stairs that was not there. But her daughter was not afraid of the dark. That was something Maya had noticed one night when Lily was 9. She had gone in to check on her, the way she always did, and Lily's lamp had been off, and her door had been open, and she had been sleeping on her stomach with her face turned toward the hallway and one foot hanging off the bed. No nightlight, no flashlight under the pillow. Just a kid asleep in a room with the door open, trusting the hallway beyond it. Maya had stood in the doorway for a long time. Then she had gone back to her bedroom, and she had gotten into bed next to the man who had come out of a parking garage and into her life and rearranged every single thing about it, and she had put her hand on his chest. He had still been awake. He had put his hand over hers. Hey! Hey! What? Lily's asleep with her door open. Yeah, she's been doing that. I know. Why are you crying? I'm not crying. Okay. I'm a little bit crying. Come here. She had scooted over against him. He had put his arm around her. She had put her ear against his chest, and she had listened to his heart, which was a regular heart, the kind of heart that any man had. And she had thought, my daughter sleeps with her door open. Lucien. Yeah. We're okay. Yeah, Maya. We're okay. I mean it. I wanted to tell you, in case I don't say it enough. We're okay. I know. I mean, we're real. This is real. I know it's real, honey. I wasn't always sure. I know you weren't. I'm sure now. Okay. 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 Go to sleep. I don't want to. Why not? Because this is a good part. I want to stay in it. He had laughed at that. A small, soft laugh she felt in his ribs before she heard in the air. It's still going to be here in the morning, Maya. You promise. I promise. Okay. She had fallen asleep with her ear on his chest and her hand on his stomach, and somewhere down the hall her older daughter had been sleeping with her door open, and somewhere across the apartment her younger daughter had been making small, snuffly noises into a crib blanket, and somewhere much further away, in a city that had once felt like a sentence and now felt like a home, a dark sedan had been parked on a quiet street, and a man named Andre had been reading a paperback and occasionally looking up. The next morning she made coffee. Lily came out of her room in her uniform for school, which she did not yet resent the way she would in 2 years. Sophia, who was 3.5, was dancing for no reason in front of the refrigerator. Lucien came out of the shower with a towel around his neck and kissed the top of Sophia's head and then the top of Lily's head, in that order, because Lily had once, at 7, told him the kiss order was baby's first, and he had never forgotten. Cheese in the eggs? He said. Cheese in the eggs, Sophia said. Crusts off? He said. Crusts off forever, Lily said, with the solemnity of a very small pope. Maya sat at the counter with her coffee and watched the three of them move around each other in a kitchen she had once not been able to pay the electric bill for. She watched her husband crack eggs into a bowl with his left hand while reaching for the salt with his right, because he was good at cooking now, actually good. And she watched her older daughter rolling her eyes at her younger sister, and she watched Sophia suddenly put a wooden spoon on her own head like a hat, and she thought, this is my life. This one. The one in this kitchen. This one is the one. She took a sip of coffee. It was bitter. He had made it too strong again. She didn't say anything. She just drank it. Outside somewhere, the city went on being the city. Inside, the eggs smelled good. She had been a woman who stood up from behind an SUV. That had been a long time ago now. She still was. She always would be. That was the whole story.